Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, let's start off with the silver lining. At least I don't have to hear those damn bells anymore.
That is a silver lining. They are very few and very far between after last weekend's game. For you and others who traveled for that ball game, I'm sure they're echoing the same. But the rest of the story, not quite as relieving.
Yeah, the Devils go down to Starkville, make a valiant comeback after really putting forth together one of the most disappointing halves we've seen in recent memory, for it to all fall apart in the waning seconds. But is it all bad? Is it the jolt they need? Is it a harbinger of doom? We got a lot to discuss today.
Yeah, ASU, as a lot of folks know, one of just a very small handful of teams that entering the season was theoretically going to be favored in every single ball game that they would play the 2025 season. Well, things went south in game 2, as we talked about last week. The first game, not very impressive, even in a victory over Northern Arizona. So we are going to talk amongst ourselves here and also bring in some incredible guests to just kind of break down what's been happening so far, where ASU is. Should you freak out? Should you jump off the train? Or is this team going to come out revitalized, ready to be that squad that won the Big 12 last year? We don't know all the answers, but we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, we might need to find a different conveyance rather than trains, because that's how, of course, that's some bad connotation. I don't know if Kenny's made a vehicular.
Well, even though didn't he say that his favorite band is Train?
Oh God. Well, he was quick to walk that one back after. He's like, oh, I don't listen to music. It was the first thing. That's just Kenny being Kenny. But anyway, that's probably another day's problem. Yes, Joe, we're going to be joined by the great Jordan Simone as he, of course, brings his unfiltered takes into what he's seen so far and gives his thoughts on whether you should be on or off the vehicle of choice for you for this Sun Devil team in 2025. We're also going to be talking to ASU tight end Chamon Metayer, who not catching a whole lot of passes, although the coaching staff wants that to change, and he's been doing some great work in the trenches as a blocker. We're also going to go behind Texas state lines with Keff Ciardello, Bobcat insider, all that good stuff. But first, let's start off with some news. On the positive front for the injuries, Justin Watley, the defensive end who had put together a scintillating fall camp, he's back. Can confirm he's out there practicing today and looking good.
Yeah, and that's a big name to have back in the mix. I mean, ASU, they've had some limited spurts, but this is still a team in search of a much better pass rush. And by all accounts, what Brad and Hode and others have mentioned from fall camp, he was a man on fire doing that sort of thing. So any hands on deck they can have to help that. And as we knew from last year, he was just a legit playmaker, fumble recoveries, things like that. He was just on the spot. So that's the type of thing that you need when you're really trying to, piece things back together and try to get the ship moving in the right direction. If you got a guy on defense who can make some plays and get some takeaways like Watley can, that's a big deal.
All right. So other injury notes that we can talk about: running back Kyson Brown. Real kind of sad that he was unable to really go against Mississippi State as he visited his returned back to his home state with an ankle injury. He's probably out, and that's Kenny's terms. Wide receiver Jalen Moss, TBD at this point. I can't say. Tuesday morning he was out of practice participating in wide receiver drills, so we'll see where things go from there.
Yeah, Kyson Brown, obviously it's unfortunate not to have him on the lineup. That said, that's a position group where ASU is prepared to cushion a blow. As we saw with Kanye Udo and Raleek Brown in that 1-2 punch in the second half when ASU remembered that it is permissible to just line up in a standard formation and run the ball. When that thought popped in their head in the second half, tremendous success running the ball with those guys.
All right, so some rankings updates as ASU, of course, fell to 1-1 on the year. They entered the weekend number 12 in the AP poll. They dropped all the way out, but not too far out, as they were the number 26th team in the country, just on the top of the also receiving votes list. A little bit better in the coaches poll, but my thoughts on the coaches poll and the value there is pretty well known. They're 24th there.
Yeah, and none of that is a surprise. None of that should be met with any sort of agitation from Sun Devil fans. I was wondering how far they would drop after week 1 in that lackluster performance against NAU, even in a victory, and that was only one spot at that time. So for them to drop out of the rankings, it is a very well-earned slide for ASU because of their performance on the football field, because we're not taking into consideration things that happened in 2024. Now then, obviously, it's very early in the season, and mixed reactions about preseason and early season polls. I think I'm just legitimately at the spot where, like, after the first 4 full, if I had to change it, put 4 full weeks of action in before the first poll comes out. But again, they are what they are. You need something to talk about on social media. So for ASU to tumble like it did, it just makes sense. But naturally, they can either get back in that mix, or in the case of the coaches poll, stay in there and continue to rise, or they can just make it absolute certain that they're not in the polls with their play in the future.
Did you see the AP voter who went viral today?
I did not.
She went on a podcast. So on her ballot, she had Florida up 2 spots after they got upset by South Florida. And that's not like, there's weird stuff, like maybe not like that all the time, but there's weird stuff in the voting. But she went on a podcast and then said, "Oh, the AP votes really, none of this really mattered. It's not a big deal." And it's kind of laughing at, like, no, there's like significant ramifications for these polls, even though maybe they start early, but like, it shapes narrative, and ultimately, there's so much goes into these things. But it's just like, wow.
And to be a voter, like, I could understand if you are maybe a media personality who's not a voter, or maybe someone that is a little scorned by not being a voter. But that is just a really, really weird stance, and, concerning. Again, this is the first I've heard of it, so I don't know the deep nature of it. But I mean, that's the kind of thing that, like, a person's right to have that vote in that poll should be taken into, very serious consideration and taken under the microscope. If not only are they voting in that, irredeemable way, but going out in public and basically saying that the poll doesn't matter, I think that's the kind of thing that those folks just don't need to be voting in that particular poll.
Reminds me of a couple years ago, one of the ASU's good seasons when U of A was bad, and for 1 week there was a voter who had them flipped, but then it was like, oh, the same thing the second week, and like, okay, no, this isn't just like selecting the wrong thing in the drop down menu. This is some willful weirdness.
I think I remember one of those occasions. It might have been the same one, or one of the weeks, to where folks were genuinely asking, is this voter legitimately confusing Arizona and Arizona State? Because this would possibly be like the most ridiculous example thereof. So I think I remember what I'm talking about, and I think that's the same thing you are, but just goes to show this crap happens too often.
So an update is we're starting to get some in-season conference kickoff times. ASU's road trip to open up conference play against Baylor in Ralph Amsden's favorite town of Waco, Texas, will kick off 4:30 p.m. Arizona time, 6:30 local in Waco, 7:30 Eastern, and you don't have to worry about it being on streaming because it's on national TV on Fox.
Yeah, so that's the exact same kickoff as last week. That's not too bad of a time. We'll get to that game when we get to it, but that's one with some major implications for sure.
All right. So as we close out the news part, we got to talk about, of course, the most important thing, especially to our guy Cole Streeper. Uniforms win games, and ASU has a good chance to win the October 18th game against Texas Tech. They're looking sharp in some upcoming 1975 throwbacks.
It's a good look. Obviously, ASU in many capacities is honoring that 1975 team, including but not limiting to inducting the entire team into ASU Sports Hall of Fame. Naturally, do the math. It's the 50-year anniversary of that team, which I believe finished number 2 in the AP poll and claimed some national championships, I believe, in some polls that are not necessarily recognized for championships. So yeah, it's a good look. You got to get some positivity. I don't know. I honestly hadn't checked if there were a lot of the just focus on football crowd.
Yeah.
That, those reactions.
There always is.
Like it's one or the other kind of thing. So that ball game, as it stands, certainly has the potential to be a huge game. Still a few ball games for both teams to play. Texas Tech playing with some momentum. We know and have talked about what they did in the transfer portal this past offseason. So that ball game has the potential to be something very significant. Now it's up to both teams to kind of earn their way into that significance with their play from now till then.
Yeah, there's probably going to be some ASU fans that are a little offset because it is like ASU looking like they're going to be in the light colored jerseys at home, although it's technically a cream. And so I remember, like, back a few years ago, they wore kind of that sand, dark cream color. And pulled off a pretty nice win over Washington. So, hey, maybe some mojo there.
Yeah. And those, I forget the title of it, but the ones that they wore, against Colorado when Eno Benjamin had that spinning run.
Oh, yes. There you go.
I mean, this has to be the case. Is there an occasion that we can think of where ASU has worn white or an offshoot of white at home.
Yes, the New Mexico game is like 2015. It's the one where Demario Richard had like the 95
That
yard
would be
catch and run.
2015.
It was
Yes,
the home whiteout that did not go over well, and then Cal Poly.
Yeah, they did. That was the same year. Because
I
they
think
played them that year. I mean, they played them a
something.
few times. I think
It was yeah. It was there was a couple year period where they did like a whiteout at home, and people they haven't done it since because I don't think it went over well.
Man, if they would have worn the all white last weekend at Mississippi State, because I'm kind of in that that look is cursed community, and man, that would have had some statements for sure. But yeah, no, it's a very clean look to honor a great team, and you just hope that when ASU takes the field that day, that they line up with the kind of passion that you saw to that 1975 team. If you're around in those days, I was not, but sound like they're pretty damn good.
All right, Joe. So before we bring on a master of the hot takes,
before we bring in one of our great friends, someone that we can definitely call one of our homies. This is for all the homies out there. If you want a restaurant as passionate about supporting Sun Devil athletics as you are, you got to make Burrito Express your local burrito joint. Burrito Express began with a vision, a family-run Mexican restaurant serving authentic food with fast, friendly service and deep community roots, making Burrito Express a true multi-generational, family-led legacy. From the beginning, it's always been about flavor, family, and the people they serve at Burrito Express. Burrito Express is more than just a place to eat. They're part of the neighborhood. And as you know by now, a strong figure in the Sun Devil community. From day one, they focused on bold flavors, fast service, and real connections with the communities that they serve. It's that mix of quality, culture, and care that makes Burrito Express different. Burrito Express delivers bold flavor, fast service, and hometown pride in every bite. You can order online for pickup or delivery and fuel up with real deal burritos made fresh daily across the valley. You can visit any of their 9 locations, 2 of which are fast and fresh restaurants located in Circle K stores. And you can also find Burrito Express in Tempe, Scottsdale, Chandler, Gilbert, and Queen Creek. Most locations are open 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday and 8 to 3 on Saturday and Sundays, with some locations open 6 to 3 during the week and 7 to 3 on weekends. Check them out online at theburritoexpress.com and follow them on social media at BurritoEXP on Twitter and Instagram, Burrito Express AZ on TikTok, and on Facebook at facebook.com/yourlocalburritojoint. All right, Sun Devil fans, get comfortable, get some popcorn, because we are welcoming back to the show one of our favorite guests of all time, a man who truly tells it like it is. During his incredible days playing for the Sun Devils, he was number 38 in the game programs, but he's number 1 in the hearts of Sun Devil fans everywhere. Of course, we were talking about the illustrious, the incomparable, the sometimes controversial, and that's why we got him here. Our brother, Jordan Simone, my man.
Hey, boys.
How you doing, buddy?
It's great to be back on with you. It's been too long, in my opinion, but it seems like football season goes away for a little bit, but then it comes back. But it was a shorter off season for us, coming off the Big 12 championship and the playoff run, which was incredible, which we have come to find out doesn't mean a whole lot this year, does it?
That is a fact, and we're going to tackle all those topics. But before we jump into sports, let's talk real life. Let's talk about things that really matter. How's life? How's the family? Just catch everybody up on how.
All good. Yeah, kids are doing good. My wife is a rock star. I'm not just saying that because she's sitting next to me. I'm saying that because she's the best. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Please don't hurt me. No, we're doing great. You know, work is great. I'm just excited to be watching the Devils again, and excited to talk to you boys about what's going on.
All right, so let's start things off. Just top line it. What level of concern or worry do you have right now about the season so far?
The level of concern I have is very
we
little.
We got to make up new words because like it's kind of like
Concerns and worries. Everybody knows. Everyone knows those are concerns. Okay, if you didn't know, now you do know. I'm not worried. You know what? When I was watching that game against Mississippi State this weekend, I kept telling a couple of my buddies, I was like, if I could see them losing this game, and you know, like just the SEC road game, super humid. I mean, Brad, you were there. You could probably speak to that, but I mean, it's such a different feel. You know, like should they have won that game? Probably, but it's a game that you know was going to be tough. no matter what. Even I don't care if it's the worst SEC team, it's still an SEC team. They still have got elite athletes from the Southeast. Um, so like I think that this team needed to be humbled, pretty big. And I think this is exactly what it was for them, is just a real look in the mirror kind of moment. And I've heard people say that within the program now that, like, hey, this is exactly what we needed. Let's refocus, recommit. Everybody focus on your own thing. Sam Levitt, you don't need to win the Heisman every play. Just if you got to throw the check down, throw the check down. So we'll see, against Texas State here, who's not going to be a cakewalk by any means, but it's a good opponent to just get your legs back under you, I think.
So Sun Devil fans, historically and now, of course, are always very rational and level-headed. That is what we know about them. There have been a handful of different takes over the last several days. There are a lot that are saying this program's back at a 3-win level. There are folks that are saying this is just an anomaly and it's an 11-1 team or a championship caliber team. And there's takes all across the board, anywhere in between. What
Yep.
would your message be to the Sun Devil faithful at this immediate time on, kind of how they should handle things?
I tweeted it after the game. I was like, everybody just needs to take a deep breath and relax. Okay. It's a long year. They lost to Texas Tech last year. They lost to Cincinnati. Everything was fine. They didn't lose a conference game. So everything that they want to do is still right in front of them. Like, did they look terrible in the first half? Yeah, they didn't look good. The penalties is a huge problem. They've got to clean that up. They can't turn the football over. They run the ball really well. Like, clearly that's the thing that they do well. I think Kyson's hurt. He's probably not in this game playing this weekend, but he'll probably be back. But Raleek has looked freaking sick too. I mean, that dude's a stud, jumping over people already. So they've got depth at the position. I mean, Udo looked, I think better than anybody expected him to coming out of camp. The word was like, he's not the guy that we thought he was. No, the dude's a gamer. There's some guys that are like that. They don't practice well and they get in a game and ball. Clearly, he's one of those guys. So I'm not like terribly worried. I think, Sun Devil fans have the right to have an opinion, just based on what they've seen, for this year. But everybody just, relax, calm down, trust Kenny to do his thing, trust those coaches that want a Big 12 championship to get them dialed in and get them back where they need to be.
So you spent your playing career terrorizing quarterbacks and making their lives miserable. So far, Sam Levitt not having a real fun time so far this season. As you're watching him through just these first 2 games, what are you seeing from QB1? And why he may be struggling a little bit.
I hate to even say it, and I don't think this is going to be the case for him, just because I think he's got great coaches that will help him focus on the important things. But the term sophomore slump gets thrown around because it's hard to handle success. It really, truly is. I would even say for myself, after my junior year, going into my senior year, I had a little bit of a slump for a couple games where you start thinking about so much stuff besides just playing your position. For me, I was thinking about, I got a freshman linebacker in front of me. Okay, I got a corner that's new next to me. I got, a D lineman over here. So I'm thinking like, okay, I got to help everybody get in their position. No, no, no. You just focus on your keys, your assignment, and your role. And I think I heard Sam even say that in a post game press conference, was like, I was trying to be everything and do everything for everybody. Like, no, man, just play quarterback. Just do your thing. And that's what happens as this, you go into your sophomore season and you start thinking like, and I'm not saying this is true for him, but you start thinking you're the man and you stop focusing on the little things, and you believe that you're going to ball out, but it still takes, the discipline to make the right read, to read the defense correctly. And so I just hope that his coaches are on him about that and helping him get, in the right mindset. I even heard him talking about just understanding the game plan. Like, yes, do all the little things, because the little things are what win games.
So let's stay on the offensive side of the ball, stick with the pass game here. It's been real interesting these first 2 games, as it's a really, really heavy dose of Sam Levitt to Jordan Tyson. Now, of course,
Yeah.
Tyson is your All-America wide receiver, but there really has been very little success, and in many cases, not a lot of attempts to get other wide receivers involved, and they're barely even sniffing the tight ends. And ASU has a tight end room with a really high ceiling this year.
Yeah.
What do you think is behind just it only being Levitt to Tyson with some scraps for the rest?
I just think that the offseason was all about them too. I think every article that I saw was about Tyson and Levitt and how they're first rounders. And, I'm sure that they have a great bond and a great trust level in each other. And I'm sure he wants to feed him the rock. Any great quarterback that's got a great receiver wants to feed him the rock. But the way that you do that is you run the football to set that up, and you use that player as a decoy from time to time so that they can't bracket coverage or double cover the guy like that. So I, I understand why he, wants to throw it to him. I would want to throw it to him if I was him. But the way to truly get him the best opportunity is to get others involved, especially that tight end group. Metayer was a stud for them last year, and I was expecting him to take a big jump this year. He had a little bit of trouble with some drops, but I was expecting after an off season of hitting the jugs machine and just working on some of the little things there that we'd see him involved a lot more. So I know those coaches are all over him right now, going, look at these four guys covering Jordan Tyson. Okay, now look at your three other receivers over here that don't have anybody guard them. So let's just go through our reads. Okay, Tyson is understandably an All-American. We're going to give him the ball. Okay, don't worry about that. We're going to call his number, but we got to go through our keys and reads and work your progressions to find the open receiver, because right now it's not working for anybody.
All right. So looking at the defense of this past Saturday night, for the most part, about mostly a good game. Like 60 of the 60 to 63 plays were pretty solid. Unfortunately, those other three plays were long bomb touchdowns, including the ultimate game winner. What does the defense have to do to be able to kind of like put that mental shakeup behind them and move on and forward and work and kind of eliminate those big plays?
Yeah, I think it's you got to have a quick memory as a corner, as a safety, or on defense. You're going to get scored on. It happens. It's part of the game. Like you said, they really played a pretty solid game. That last play, I think that's leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And I'm not talking about the fans. I'm talking about those players. You don't think they're pissed off about that? They should be more pissed off than anybody. I mean, you go back and watch the tape, and Alfred's blitzing off the edge, gets tripped up by their receiver who comes in motion. Otherwise, if he doesn't get tripped up, he blows up the quarterback 10 times out of 10. It's just like, cannot believe that he got tripped up. And the one thing I will say about the defense that has been noticeably different for me this year is that they don't fly to the football like they did last year. I don't know if you guys have noticed that in watching them, but I remember last year, there wasn't a lot of expectation around the football team. And I just kept going the first couple games, like, you know what? The defense just flies to the football. They might not, make every play, but they're missing tackles, there's penalties. The effort just wasn't there. And then in the second half, I think you saw them turn it up a little bit. They played a lot better game. So you just hope that, like I said in the beginning, this is something that they learn from, um, and put some more gas in the tank just to get them all to recommit and play hard and do the little things that got them to the championship last year, and that playoff run is flying to the football, because good things happen when you do that.
So we've all seen the data time and time again in the offseason about how many starters ASU returns and the production that it returns and how that stacks up near or at the top of the list on a national level. But like you just talked about, the team's not flying to the ball on defense like it did last year. The offense is way out of sync compared to a year ago. So in your opinion, how is it that ASU has had such a shaky start despite having so many returning players and so much returning productivity from a top 10 team last year?
It's a good question. I would love for somebody to ask their coaches that and just say, like, what is your opinion? Because I'm always curious, like, what a coach would say to that question. Um, all off season, I've been worried about the kind of sophomore slump mentality, which is, like, our coaches used to always say, if you read something positive, it has a negative effect on you. If you read something negative, it has a negative effect on you. Because if you start reading all these headlines that say, like, oh, you guys are number one, you're going to be the best, you're going to be great, you really start believing it and go, like, oh yeah, we're going to be good, man. But, like, hey, we made a mistake in practice, we'll get it in the game. It's just, it's just so hard to, even for us in 2015, like I hate to even talk about 10 years ago, but like 2015, we were supposed to be great, right? We were supposed to have a bunch of people coming back, and we were going to be all good, and we win 6 games. Now, obviously, this team's much different. They return, a lot more starters, and their quarterback situation and receivers is, different. But like you read these headlines that you're going to be the man, and all of a sudden you ain't the man. You don't know why. It's because that sophomore slump mentality that it's just tough to break. That the mentality behind that is just, it's hard to understand unless you've been in it. Um, but again, this is where coaching is more important than anything. This is where and I've been saying this, for a couple months now, is last year was unbelievable, right? Kenny, zero expectations, win the Big 12 championship, unbelievable year, a year that goes down in ASU history, probably the most fun football season I've ever watched, being a part of this program. But this year is really the biggest test of Kenny Dillingham as a coach. What do you do when the expectation is flipped? What do you do when you're supposed to win it again? So really, I'm going to be looking to see, what does the team's attitude look like coming out of the tunnel? Are they flying to the football? Are they all there? Are they fired up? Are they running the football? Is the offensive line just creating these huge holes? Like the coordinators, are they calling good games? Because frankly, I don't know that the coordinators have called great games over the past couple weeks either. And that's obviously a whole nother conversation, but I'm just going to be looking for, can they get them to just do the little things that they did well last year? Fly to the football, tackle, gang tackle on defense, and then run the football downhill, which sets up Levitt. Nothing sets up Levitt like a good running game.
So a moment ago, you briefly mentioned the 2015 season. This next question wanted to focus on the year before that, 2014, your junior year at ASU.
Yes.
There's some general parallels there. I'll tell you what I'm talking about. So that was a season that was right after a very good year, and as good of a season that ASU had in nearly 20 years at that point.
Yep.
There was some early season adversity for ASU to begin 2014. In the first month of the season, Taylor Kelly goes down to injury. Blowout loss to UCLA at home. However, obviously, as we know, the team was able to keep things in check, ended up being a very, very memorable year and a 10-win season. What happened within that first month of the season internally to make sure that things did not go off the rails? I'm trying to think of something that, comparing this to that. And if tell us about that.
I think it's a good comparison to look at. Each team is new, right? There's new leaders on each team, new guys that rise to leadership roles. So it can take some time to find your identity as a football team. When we got blown out by UCLA, God, that game was so brutal. Blackout game. I remember it. I remember it well, but I don't remember it at all. Weirdly, all I remember is Huntley. What was his name? The quarterback, Hundley.
Brett Hundley.
Still Brett Hundley.
Brett Hundley, yeah. All I remember was him just running all over the place, throwing touchdowns. Like just stepping over everybody. But that was a game that really got us to like lock back in, right? To recommit and go like, who are we? Are we going to dig in or are we going to quit? And then you go play USC the next week. I think that was the next week.
Yeah, Jalen Mary was, because I remember.
And we went
just
on
to
a Hail
cut you
Mary.
off. Yeah. Before that play, I remember I was watching it at home, and before Burko took the snap, I just remember saying inside my head, well, at least it's better than last week. They're improving.
Yeah.
Things improve, over the next few seconds of my life, things improve dramatically.
Yeah. But it's a win like that against at USC after that you go like, that propels you to play with more confidence, going to the next week and more excitement. And then, you rattle off a run in conference of really good football teams that, you're able to beat. So the hope for the loss that they had against Mississippi State this week is that they do that, right? That they recommit, they refocus on the little things, and get a big win this weekend, right? And then you go on the road against Baylor. And that's going to be a good test as well. Baylor's a good football team. And I think that the Big 12 is open for the taking. There's good football teams. I was watching TCU. They've got a great quarterback who can sling it all over the yard. And TCU is probably one of those teams that's like ASU last year, where people are talking about them, but I don't know that anybody picked them to win the conference. So, like they've got a great opportunity ahead of them. So it's going to be a tough road for them. ASU's just got to come out this week and show that they are a team that can do the little things right. They can get the job done on defense, can run the football, and then Levitt. If something's not there, use your legs. But let's try to get the tight ends involved. Let's try to get a few other people. And really it's on the coordinator, in my opinion. It's on the offensive coordinator. He's still a young quarterback, right? How can you get him comfortable early? How can you get a couple other guys involved early to just get in the flow of the game and get him comfortable? So the run game, I think, this week especially will be key.
So I'm going to preface this next question by saying we're not going to ask you to commit to whether you're on or off any particular trains. We're not going to do that to you again here. But how do you see this season unfolding in general? Do you feel like ASU, based on what you've seen so far, still has what it takes to have a season that is just not looked at as, it may, even if it doesn't parallel last year, just isn't viewed as a major step back?
Well, to answer the first question, the question that transpired and led to a lot of crazy stuff. I could not be more on the Kenny Dillingham train. I love Kenny. I love the staff that they have, and I believe in him wholeheartedly. I think that I hope that Kenny is the coach at ASU until, like when he's retiring, like I'll be, we're right around the same age. So like, it would just be great for me just to be there around the program for the next 50 years. Kenny's the coach, build a statue next to Cush. I would love that. So I love what they're doing. I love the mentality, and look, it's year 3 for them, right? Is it year 3? Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's year 3. And like the expectation of our program is to win championships. Like let's all not forget what we came from a couple years ago, from a 3-win team. So it wasn't a fluke. It was not a fluke that we made it the Big 12 championship. Is it tough to win games? Absolutely. This is college football. Every week you gotta show up and win. Otherwise you're gonna be on the chopping block. But I believe in Kenny. I love what he's doing, and I have no doubt. And I forgot the other part of your question.
Basically, how you see the season unfolding. Do you think it'll reach a level that just isn't a big step back? Again, even if it's not another 10-win season, winning the Big 12, going to the playoff.
Yeah.
Just something to where, hey, the trajectory's still there.
100%. I mean, they're still building their culture, right? They're still, in year 3, they're still scratching the surface, in my opinion. They were really fortunate to have a couple things go their way last year. And things happen at the right time, ball bounces the right way to get a couple, gritty wins. But man, you could lose, 1 or 2 games in the Big 12 clearly and still win the Big 12 championship. Right. So, and I think there will be some cannibalism this year just in this conference. I just think there's some pretty good teams all across the board. It's not going to be, every week's not going to be an easy week. So I think you just take it one game at a time, go beat Texas State, prepare for Baylor. The thing also about last year was that it seemed like they got better every single week, and Levitt got better every single week. So you just want to see that same progression. You want to see them take a step this week and really put their foot on the throat of Texas State, dominate that game, because they should, especially at home, even though they played in a tight one against them last year. They should dominate them at home. But people forget that last year, like Texas State was a 1-score game, I'm pretty sure. I mean,
I was at that. That was the game that broke the curse, and I felt like I was the literal only person in that stadium because remember that was another one of those deals where they put a second back on the clock. That facility had completely emptied out, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, this is how this is going to continue. So I'm going to be the only one to see this horror.
Let's just remind people that like this football team and this coaching staff, it takes time to find your identity and to grow and to get better every single week. And these losses can be a positive. They can be. This will be a great test this week for them, just to get back on the train and keep things rolling in the right direction.
All right, so we're winding down here. Obviously ASU fans have some PTSD in their fandom, and there's been a lot of the years where they point to hype and preseason expectations that ultimately kind of fizzled out. Do you think that there's actually an ASU with expectations curse?
I don't want to say no because I just know I know that our fans just believe it to their core. I'm not a big believer in curses. I think, each team is unique. Obviously, the psychology behind, expectations just creates its own demons in the background, right? Like if you're supposed to be good and you're not, then it just makes it worse. But I would just encourage all ASU fans to just believe in this team and back this team and not talk so much trash after a one loss out of conference game. Everybody take a deep breath. Everything's going to be fine. Just take it one game at a time. Believe in Kinne, believe in what they're doing, encourage them, and if you don't like what you're seeing, go donate to NIL because that's how they're going to get better players.
Now, I know you mentioned that you don't believe in curses, but I also know for a fact that you believed wholeheartedly in one that I participated in that we just mentioned a moment ago, which I broke last year. So I know there's at least one curse. I think it made it to the airways, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, so last one for you. So you were known during your day as an inspirational leader, a fiery leader. So if you were in that Sun Devil locker room just the moments before they run through Tillman Tunnel to take on those Texas State Bobcats, what's your message?
Oh my God, I can't wake up my children. My house is not that big. They're close. If I start screaming in here, I'm going to wake them up. But I think that Kinne and the staff will have them prepared. Everybody's going to be recommitted. But my message to the team would just be like, go back to the things that got you to where you are today. Do all the little things. Everybody has their own job. Okay. Don't try to do anybody else's job. Just do your job. Quarterback, you play quarterback. On defense, if you got a blitz, you got to hit home, because if you don't hit home, you're leaving a corner out one-on-one for 4 or 5 seconds. It's impossible to cover that long at this level. So everybody just got to do their job and fly to the frickin' football, no matter what. Effort, effort, effort. Finish blocks on offense. D-line, get off blocks, make plays, and go have fun, dude. Just go play hard. And there's nothing better than just playing hard and winning. And to win, you got to do the little things right. And I would give that speech in a locker room in a way different vibe, and I would probably curse a couple more times, and I'd probably try to headbutt somebody. Probably DJ Foster, he'd probably be in there. He'd probably let me headbutt him.
We can't have cussing and headbutting out there at home with the wife and kids. That
No, exactly. No, nobody likes that. And anybody that's listening to this podcast on their drive to work, as I do, they don't want to hear me. Have a great day at work, though, if you're on your way to work right now.
The type of content and insight you can only get from the one and only Jordan Simone. My brother.
Do we know what episode number this is for me?
Ooh.
Oof, I had closing in on 20. It's got to be
Come
right.
on, it's got to be at least 20.
Yeah, I'll have to check and tweet that out. I don't remember offhand, but you're definitely like a top 5 all time.
Guys, I'm also thinking about just diving back into the podcast game. I just have so many thoughts about ASU. How would you guys feel about me diving back into that?
Dude, what you did before was awesome. I love those. I really did. I mean, that's something that was
Untold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did Untold, but I think I'd just start just like a casual ASU football talk and talk about. I actually really like talking betting lines as well. So I think I'd probably talk a little about the lines of the games as well, and not just ASU, but some of the bigger games for college football. But if I had your support, it'd mean the world to me.
You have our support. I think I can speak for Brad. You have our full support. And I know, the feedback that we get, everybody loves hearing from you, my friend, and the fact that you always keep it real. And I know that anything you do, it would get the full support of the Sun Devil fans and us as well.
I love it. And then I need a commitment that you guys would come on my show.
Anytime.
Committed.
I love it.
All right. Well, now
I appreciate you, boys.
My brother. All righty. Jordan Simone officially permanently on the train. No train related controversies in this interview whatsoever. Thank you so much, my brother.
Boys. You guys are the best. Thank you.
We're going to catch up soon, my man. All the best to you and the family.
Thanks.
Now, Brad, we're in the fast lane into the 2025 season. I think some Sun Devil fans are wishing that things could be put in reverse and taken back to 2024. But if you're jonesing for ASU to get back to its winning ways, and you're also jonesing to get a new vehicle, put that combination together and contact Jones Auto Group. They got to be your only call if you're in the market for a new ride. Jones Auto Group has been servicing the state of Arizona and the Sun Devil community for more than 50 years with multiple locations across the state. You know by now, it is a fact. Jones Auto Group was the original provider of vehicles to Sun Devil student athletes for NIL purposes, and they're still in that game to this day. And it's your support that enables them to continue to do that year after year. In addition to their unwavering support of Sun Devil athletics, Jones Auto Group offers unique tax advantages due to their dealership locations that can save you some big time money. The tax rate of where one of their dealerships is located is just lower than it typically is. So when you're purchasing a vehicle, even something like that, that can add up to some big time money, some big time savings. So that's the best of both worlds. You work with the fellow Sun Devil and potentially save some big time money. So here's what you do. Should know it by now, but if you don't, pull out your phone, get a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, write this down. Parker Jones, he's the owner, the GM, also a third-generation Arizona State alum, a diehard Sun Devil fan. He wants to hear from you. You're not calling some 800 number, not dealing with an operator or even a salesperson on a car lot. You're talking to the owner. 602-881-8998. Again, that's 602-881-8998. Browse their inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles at jonesautocenters.com. Jones Auto Group, Arizona's best since 1970.
All right, it's time. Let's talk about ASU's 24-20 road upset loss at Mississippi State. Quite simply, it's kind of a tale of two halves, and you just quite simply can't do that on the road against an SEC team. Any SEC team, they're pretty good, even the worst of the lot. Joe, where do you want? I mean, everybody who's listened to this saw the game. You know how it happened. What do you want to start, offense or defense, in terms of just like breaking down what happens and what?
I mean, I guess we could start it from how the game started, I guess, on defense. You know,
All
Texas State, getting ahead of myself here. Mississippi State. I mean, they were just able to, how many plays and how little time that first drive, they just chunked their way down the field. And I mean, heck, I was driving to my buddy's house to watch the game, and while I had my old man on the radio, and I was just a few minutes late to get to my buddy's place. I mean, they'd already scored by the time I was walking in to check the game out. So, you know, when you had, and that to me just was kind of an omen, and that it was a whole ASU had to dig itself out of, and that was just the last thing that you wanted to see if you're a Sun Devil fan after that lackluster performance against NAU. You wanted to come out, see them on fire to begin the game. So that, and then packaged with the just horrendous offense in the first half, it was just this package deal that, my goodness, ASU just couldn't find its way out. And then, you know, we'll talk about it, you know, more molecularly, but when it got to the second half and things started clicking, you were just in such a hole that you had to essentially play a perfect half. And they almost kind of did that until that last drive. But it was such a razor thin, microscopic margin for error that those small few errors that happened at the end, because of that first half hole, took ASU out of the game.
It was like a genuinely shocking start, a genuinely impressive comeback, and then just like a genuine just gut punch ending there. And yeah, you said it started off with the defense. Mississippi State wins a toss. They elect to take the ball. And I think one of our keys and one thing points from last week is like ASU start fast, take that crowd out of it, because they were fired up. And it was kind of interesting. Like down in Starkville, a couple of the Uber drivers there, a couple of them said like the same thing, different ways, of just like Kenny's comments that were obviously taken a little bit out of context over the course of the week about Starkville, the hotel situation. Say, oh, that you know, 5,000 people are more in that stands tonight because of those comments than before.
Which is wild. I mean, like it's a fact. Like if you're traveling a college football team, you need to have well over 100. You know, like the personnel that you have to fit. It's just like sometimes people just take offense to anything they possibly can, and if statements of fact are given that just are in any way, shape, or form, not even like derogatory, but just shy of gleamingly positive, people just freak out. So yeah.
And so I mean, obviously the hot start, I think it was third or fourth play of that opening drive. They hit the long touchdown pass, and you look at that defense, and like they played defense 63 plays. 60 of them could be considered like okay to good, but 3 were just complete and total disasters. And that was wild, because this is a defense a year ago that just simply did not give up big plays through the air. In fact, 4 plays over the course of the 2024 season. went for 40 or more yards against ASU through the air last year. And then there's 3 alone on Saturday night in Starkville. And that's just something that we just haven't seen yet. The run defense, we should say, was excellent. 66 yards, 30 attempts. That's 2 games in a row. We expected the run D to be, again, very good, but it's just seeing ASU carved up like that, and also carved up in the big moments. I mean, do we dive into the discourse on that final play call with the safety blitz? Xavier Alford coming in, gets tripped up, and then it just kind of shades of 4th and 13.
Yeah, and man, because Javen Robinson obviously has made a lot of plays for ASU since he arrived, but man, he was just getting eaten up by Brendan Thompson out there. I know that Thompson is the fastest player on the team, and there are a lot of superlatives thrown out during the broadcast of him being one of the fastest players in college football, and one of those includes that chop block that is questionable, I guess you could say. But gosh, I mean, when some guys are on an island, but Javen Robinson was on an island out there on that final play.
And it might have been like not how it was supposed to be, because Breedlove might have not done the intended assignment.
I have some question marks about that particular player. So I think that the nickelback is something that they may need to reevaluate.
Yeah, so it was obviously something that really came back to haunt ASU, because, again, for the most part, they were pretty good on defense yet again, but you can't be pretty good when you have 3 complete disaster plays like that.
Yeah, and you can't be pretty good when you got yourself into a 17-point hole, which they turned into a 14-point hole. But when you have the first half that ASU had, and yes, we obviously know that ASU last year had many of those games where it was either a really slow first half and a miraculous second half, or vice versa. Kansas State, BYU, some of the others where ASU was on fire in the first half and then let them creep back into the game. But we didn't. There's no memory that I have. Obviously, there's a lot of hindsight and rose-colored glasses because we know how it worked out. But there's just no memory that I have of any game that was anything like that, in terms of not only are they down, it was not as much the points, because 14, even 17 points, not insurmountable, but it was just like, there's nothing going on here. There's no heart, there's no execution, there's no fire. The Sam Levitt looks like you took a completely different human being and put him into number 10 ASU jersey and a helmet, because that player that was out there last week just looked nothing like anything we saw from him last year. Now, granted, he did not have a great game against Mississippi State last season in the explosive game that Cam Scadaboo had, but just a different type of look. So, it's something kind of like we heard from Jordan Simone about just the fire, the passion, running, flying, jumping to the ball, and the execution on offense. We just saw kind of everything, go by the wayside. And then it was just a frustrating thing. And it's very similar, though the game wasn't really in peril. It's kind of similar to what we saw against NAU, because it's like in the second half, against NAU, especially like the fourth quarter, some things just seemed to click with the coaching staff. Like, okay, now we're going to run in a traditional sense. Now we're going to attack a little bit more on defense. Like, you could see a specific moment at which things changed. And against Mississippi State, that happened too. And it's just like, why can't this happen from the opening bell? I mean, if ASU offensively would have attempted to run the ball, not even saying if they would have run the ball, if they would have attempted to have done so, because they didn't even try it in the first half like they did in the second half, and you just take some of that responsibility off Sam Levitt's shoulders when he started, 1 of 7, 1 of 8 for just a few yards.
Mm-hmm.
I think that alone, if you would have done that consistently, probably would have shifted the victory from Mississippi State to ASU, because I think they would have done enough to at least score a touchdown in the first half.
Yeah.
And put things in their favor. So again, like we heard Jordan Simone allude to, there's a lot to call into question right now. And a lot of that falls on the coordinators of this team.
Yeah. And, just finishing off on defense, I think, overall, I mean, 24 points, that's a winnable margin, even with the 3 total disasters. But yeah, just you can't have those spots. I mean, you should say Clayton Smith, nice game, 2 sacks and 3 tackles for loss. But overall, that I know, Joe, you've been looking at the pass rush. It's not there yet. Or maybe it won't ever get there, but it's just not what it needs to be.
Yeah, and even if they're getting a couple sacks, and if the sack numbers look, it's not terrible. It's not just the sacks, even though that does still need to improve. Like, that is not at a rate where it's what it should be, but it's just like the pressure. It is preventing really, really clean pockets and a lot of time for quarterbacks to throw. And it's really unique when you have a defense that shows such a strength in one area and a lack thereof in another. You know, they can really hunker down and close things in the run game and really make some limited opportunities there and just make that line of scrimmage an area that they, you know, generally own. But when it's a pass play and not a run, it's a different outcome. And I understand that it's not the exact same thing, but it's just a really curious situation when you have a defense that can, you know, really have a level of control of the line of scrimmage when they're running the ball. But when they're passing, you just don't have that same kind of force.
Yeah, we'll see how that that transpires, and especially with Justin Watley getting back in the action. Overall, though, my concerns aren't too severe with the defense. I think it's a veteran group; they'll figure it out. It's kind of an unfortunate thing with like as Simone was saying, like Alford doesn't get tripped up on the way to the quarterback. Kenny explained that decision to bring the pressure rather than kind of playing, like a cover 2 situation and just like, with no timeouts in that situation with the lead, a sack there pretty much ends the game. If it puts them, or worse, puts them at like a 4th and forever with 10 seconds left and a running clock.
Yeah, and even that right there is a statement to, you know, what we were just talking about. If you can get more quarterback pressure from your guys up front, then you may not need to send a safety in a situation like that and take such a gamble. Which, yeah, I understand the logic of that. Yeah, if you get him down, game's over. But obviously we saw the other side of that coin and what's at risk. You know, if your defensive linemen and linebackers can be the ones that are getting that sort of pressure, you don't even need to take that sort of risk. So again, things affecting one another here.
Yeah. So that defensive play call, I think there's like 3 things that the discourse and the discussion and the disagreement and the controversy are still ongoing. We'll get to the other 2 because those kind of happen on the offensive side. But let's do the Sam Leavitt topic here. Only 2 career games with a passer rating under 100, both against Mississippi State. So maybe the Bulldogs have his number, but he just did not look like the Sam Leavitt. Like that looked like early 2024, like a freshman making his first start. 10 of 22, 82 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks. But it's not just, it's just he's missing open guys. Like I think the scheme is sound in terms of like other guys not named Jordan Tyson are open consistently. He's not seeing them. And the times that he is seeing them and throwing to them, like a lot of misfires. And just the inaccuracy, which wasn't present during the last, 8 weeks of last year. It's really the passing game is in shambles right now.
Sam Leavitt looks like a different person out there. Not limiting to a different athlete, a different football player, just a different person out there. You just don't see that swagger. I mean, guys, think back to the Big 12 championship game and the immense swagger and, the runs that he had and going forward on 4th down that long, pass play early to Melquan Stovall and just and all those things and stuff that we saw, especially as the season wore on. It just seems like a different person, and it is just 100% Jordan Tyson all the way. I don't know what is going on and how, like, for example, with Malik McClain. I mean, Malik McClain is what, 6'5",
mm-hmm.
And it seems like when he tries to throw to McClain, he thinks that he's like George Mirasan out there or something like that. I mean, how do
That's
you?
a pull.
It could have gone Manu Bowl, but we went with a deeper cut there.
The B-sides.
Yeah. The Snickers commercial is legendary. The score one for the kids. If you're listening to this and you need a laugh, go on YouTube and look up Snickers commercial, score one for the kids. If you can spell George Mirasan, you'll get it there. It's awesome. But it's just like he's like trying to overthinking it. It just seems like he's far too much in his own head, and there is a very sensible reason why, and that's because this is a guy who's been touted as a strong Heisman contender. Like, if you were to make like a preseason finalist, he would probably be in that list in the preseason. Guy that's been talked about as possibly a 2026 NFL draft lottery pick. And that's a lot of pressure to be put on you and to basically put on yourself. And so that can push people into situations of just overthinking it. And so like McClain as an example, I mean, those throws are way off target. They're really, I don't know if the other receivers, I mean, how many attempts, how many targets have there even been? The tight ends, we spent this whole off season raving about them. I have them number 1 on my position confidence group, and you've seen so very little out of them so far. So I just cannot figure it out. I mean, I don't know if it's a situation where he just has not developed the rapport that he developed with, secondary receivers like Melquan Stovall and Xavier Guillory last year. I cannot fathom a guess as to why Chamon Metayer is so lightly used right now. So, I mean, it's just really at a spot where it's, Jordan Tyson or Run, and that is kind of eerily similar of a quarterback that transferred away from Arizona State and how that was played at some points during his career in Tempe. Now, I get that guy went on to some things, so that story ended the way that it did, but it's just the one read and run or just one guy that you're leaning so heavily on. It's concerning because it's not like there's a lack of pieces. I know ASU's had some injury issues, guys like Jalen Moss, AJE, that sort of thing, but you see that big old number 15 lining up a lot in the slot, Kamari Anderson. He's just running. He's just exercising at this point on the football field. So a lot of time to still unfold. And I get that, at this point last year, I was reminding myself earlier in the show, I mean, it really wasn't until, ironically, this third game against Texas State, I think last year, that even Jordan Tyson got heavily involved. Remember those first few games?
Yeah.
He had moderate numbers. We had that whole thing. Deep shots were not connecting. And then he got that one long one to connect against Texas State, and things went from there. So I know it's easy to sound the alarms because of the expectations, but yeah, things just really, really got to get figured out.
Oh, I'm not concerned yet. Or I should say I'm not worried, but there's concern. Obviously, there can't be these numbers and these performances and not be concerned. I mean, we know he can do it, so that's there. And I think as I mentioned, I think the offense is there with guys getting open. But I do think that there is definitely some pressing. Maybe he's dinged up a little bit. He's a gamer in that respect. But yeah, like the Tyson thing. Let's see. So Tyson caught 6 passes for 68 yards. That's 6 of the 10 completions. After that, Raleek Brown had 3 catches for 10 yards. Cam Harpole had 1 for 4. Metayer, your all-conference tight end, nothing. Although Kinne was extremely effusive, and just go watch the game. Obviously, Metayer's run blocking has been excellent.
Yeah.
I talked to him earlier today. You'll hear from him later on the show. He feels he's the best run blocking tight end in the country.
And he did a lot of that last year for Scat. I mean, that he's got a lot on film. He can do that.
Yeah, and also I think Sam's not being helped by the offensive line, which has been good again on the ground, I think, in run blocking, but kind of the things we talked about during the offseason are coming to light. There's just been some struggles in pass protection. Sam's been hit a few times, sacked, hurried on other occasions. I think the right side of the line, Maxi Hanachor has been having some struggles. He's been dinged up a little bit as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the passing game. Kinne has been, after the game Monday early and after practice on Tuesday, very consistent in I've got to do a better job of getting Sam in a rhythm. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. So it's, the staff taking responsibility. We'll see exactly how that happens. That said, the great way to do that, Joe, is to do what they did coming out of the second half after that disastrous first half in which they only managed an untimed down 51-yard boot by Jesus Gomez. We should tip our cap to him, showing off that leg. But they got the ball to start the third quarter and ran the ball and ran the ball, ran 8 runs, 75 yards, and a touchdown. That continued all throughout the second half. Both Kanye Udo and Raleek Brown over 100 yards on the night. Unfortunately, they couldn't get 3 more yards to their total, but I think the whole game swung on ASU rediscovering its identity as a run-first offense. The defense, up until those last 30 seconds, kind of responded, shutting down Mississippi State. But I mean, hopefully, as Kenny talked about, you hope to build off the positives in that game and what they showed in the second half. As he said, don't let Mississippi State beat you twice, in terms of just letting that emotional sting linger on. Maybe that play good defense, run the damn ball is the recipe for success.
Yeah, so about that Jesus Gomez kick, man, that looked like it could have been good from about 60 plus. I mean, that was nails. That guy can kick. We have learned that for sure. And yeah, in the first half, man, I really wish that as Leavitt was struggling, that ASU would have just run the ball in a traditional sense and maybe just get more completions, just little dink and dunk checkdowns, whatever. I liken it to like a basketball shooting guard in basketball who's run cold. Now, coaches like a Bobby Healey, I think he's the guy that coaches them to just shoot his way out of it. And it seemed like that was what ASU was trying to do, is basically to Levitt just to throw his way out of that rough start that he had. And it's like, yeah, I kind of get the idea that you're not going to, improve those matters unless you take the action to improve them. The numbers aren't going to improve unless you keep attempting passes. But at some point you have to understand that, okay, like right here, right now, things are not going great. We need to shift gears a little bit and help our offense and find ways to help our quarterback. It was just real iffy, play calling in that regard, and it just didn't work itself out until they made that switch in the second half. And so it shows what ASU is capable of. Obviously very impressive runs, and that's why it's just such a difficult loss to swallow for a number of different reasons, because had ASU held on, you can really just look at that run game and how they just stuck to it. Now, as it pertains to that goal to go situation that resulted in a field goal, couple takes on that. It is strange. There were multiple situations last year, and the one that stands out the most is when ASU had the ball against BYU after the Javen Robinson interception that in theory sealed the game, and just how weird they got with the play calling, with only a few yards to go. It was just seemed like it was being overthought, and they were going away from the simple stuff that works, because in that scenario right there, I don't remember the exact score in the situation, but I know for a fact that if ASU would have scored a touchdown in that situation, they would have clinched the game. And I think they ended up going for this against BYU. I think they went for it and failed on 4, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was some craziness there. Yeah. Then
basically, if you would have just kept it simple, you probably get a touchdown in the game. Now then, you would have never had that wild situation with the fans running on the field and off. So I guess all's well that ends well. But it does seem like ASU has had a weird reputation of not necessarily like short yardage outside the the red zone or deep red zone situations, but like at or inside the 5. Like you just got to get a couple yards. Now then, I will say that I believe that Brad and I are in agreement. I agree wholeheartedly with the call to kick the field goal as opposed to going for 100% fourth down. ASU's defense, again, it proved otherwise on the ensuing possession by Mississippi State, but ASU's defense in the second half up until that point had been lights out. They deserve the confidence in the coaching staff. Again, it didn't come to fruition. And you just, you can't leave a drive like that without any sort of points, because as it unfolded, Mississippi State had some big play potential. And then, if the game's tied and they got a field goal kicker who just hit a 55-yarder the week before, you just can't allow that. So the decision to go for the field goal and not the touchdown, I agree with, but the play calling leading up to that could have been better.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, there was like 3, I think, controversial points. The defensive play call, which, yeah, I get the thing. I probably play cover 2. I might have done some different. The field goal, I agree with what happened. Kenny said it's 1,000% a go. His words. For me, it's those 3 plays, first and goal at the 3. After ASU had marched their way from the 4-yard line incrementally down, I think in total it was like a 17-play drive, 14 runs. To give Sam credit, that third down conversion to Jordan Tyson to keep things alive. But then you get there and you just kind of run straight into a wall 3 straight times. And I guess we should say, I guess they got like basically 4 timeouts with the Josh Atkins helmet coming off situation. That is kind of another weird quirk there. But I mean, how at some point, like at 2nd and goal, do you not just like having run so much, like play a little play action, get Sam out, in space?
I was thinking the exact same thing. And I was thinking, talking to my buddies, like, I know that I've been advocating for run the damn ball, but pass the damn ball, with all of that, I'm sure I have so much confidence that you could have done some play action stuff, some bootleg stuff, and you could have caught them with their pants down, and Levitt probably could have either walked in or had somebody wide open.
Yeah, do something different there than what happened, because they had sold out against the run, and he just ran 3 straight times in there. I think it was the right decision to kick the field goal. But man, and it was interesting on Monday's press conference. Kenny talked about how Raleek in that big run got too many yards, because then it was put them in a goal to go situation instead of just having another set of downs. They could have advanced and then like kick the field goal with like 7 seconds left or something like that, which I get the math there, but he's trying to score a touchdown. That would, it's not one of those like, situations where a guy breaks in the open field down at the 1 so you can play around the clock. You need the lead to hold the lead first. It's like the Seinfeld reservations thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That in that conversation, I kind of think of that USC game in the Coliseum when N'Keal Harry had that long punt return touchdown and that incredible catch, and Manny Wilkins scored a touchdown. He had a breakaway run, and it was like, get down and run the clock out because you have the lead. And what happened in that game, obviously ASU still won, but USC drove down the field and I think had like a legit Hail Mary chance to take the lead.
I was, because we had come down from the press box. We were standing on that end zone where Manny scored. As soon as he scored, I said something like, that was a dumb play. And I won't say his name on air, but there was one of the teammates of our guest, Jordan Simone, on one of those teams, who was standing right next to me, and he's like, "What the hell are you talking about? Touchdown! Oh, we got to play the clock. Got to play the clock."
And I agreed with that wholeheartedly. So, with that take of doing that, now obviously that worked out in ASU's favor, but that's an example of, I mean, if you are tied or down, I mean, you just can't play with that high level of a strategic mentality of like sacrificing yards for, I guess, the ability to have extra time to use. I mean, that is quite presumptive.
There's been a guy in my notifications for a couple of days trying to sell me on the math that it was the smart play to run, and if you get stopped, the percentage of a safety or getting the stop there would be better than having to kick the field goal and taking a lead with a minute and a half with a deep. I don't know.
All this is hindsight being 2020, because in the heat of the moment, I don't know. I just don't think there are a lot of logical people who were really pushing for them to go for it because, again, ASU's defense was playing pretty lights out. You knew you were going to give them pretty long field. ASU was so behind the 8-ball field position wise in the first half. That was something we didn't even really mention about how that just kept ASU, from barely getting out of the blocks there. But yeah, that's one that you can say a lot of things in hindsight, but I think just ultimately, really the topic at hand is this going to prove to be that rejuvenating, humbling opportunity with a positive outcome? Kind of like Jordan Simone mentioned that UCLA blowout with the bowling ball helmets was in 2014.
That's right. It was the bowling ball.
The last time for sure.
The Bruins put up like 62 on them.
That was, I think Ishmael Adams had like a pick 6 with like a couple seconds left in the first half or something wild like that. Or is this just indicative of bigger things? And are there flaws to this team that simply are not going to be overcome? I mean, we don't know the answer to that yet. And we're not going to get we can get an answer in a negative form this weekend. I just don't know that there's any outcome that gives us a really, really conclusive, positive answer, with the ASU's ball game coming up against Texas State.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll see, and I think that first half this Saturday is going to tell us more, and the more data points we have, but I do think that there are fans that are being a little hysterical, like just chill. It's week 2, it's a non-conference loss. Not to say that ASU shouldn't have absolutely won that game, but there's just like, let's tap the brakes at this point. It could still barrel off and be a 5-7 team, and it can be a complete disaster. I don't think so. Just from all the factors we talked about all season, but you just can't like to like what you see in a number of key areas. But I do think in those key areas we have reasons on the flip side to think that they will, or at least have the ability to get better. You'd hope starting this weekend, but if not in the near term, it's still 10 games to go.
Yeah, and it's rough because obviously so much of it is a big chunk of these feelings are based on what's been shown on the field, but an even larger chunk, in my opinion, are just based on the preseason expectations. And I think an overarching hope and prayer by the Sun Devil fan base of ASU finally arriving and being a player and being a team that can perennially be in the upper tier conversation of Big 12 title contenders, and just having that be the way of life and not being certainly not the 3-win deal they had from 2022 and 2023, but not even like the ho-hum status quo of, somewhere between 6 and 8 wins, maybe a sub 500, once every 5, or more years, a double-digit win win season every decade or so, but 75%, 80% of the time you're falling in that 6 to 8 win range and just focusing on making a bowl game, maybe upsetting a team here and there, but probably losing a game you shouldn't lose. And, beating Arizona more often than not. Like that was just kind of the script before, everything went all crazy with the NCAA allegations. So I think so many fans, understandably, you get that taste. And I get it because I think I've said it before, but if I haven't, I'll say it again. I get it because of that Major League Baseball team I'm a big fan of that won the World Series in 2023 and hasn't really come close to playing at that level since. I get what it's like to just get that taste of championship level performance. And it's really difficult to be okay with that and say, you know what, that was a great run. That was a great season. I'm going to love that memory forever. If things stoop back down to kind of an average, regress back to the mean, I get it. Still got that great memory. It's so difficult to be that rational. It really is. And when you see a team that has gotten there and done that, especially in ASU and what we've said ad nauseum about all the returning talent, this is not, a case like even like a 97 ASU, which is still very good, where you lose a lot of players, or maybe the 2015 team might be a better example. Just, ones where you had a great season before, but you lose too much to really compete at that level. That's not an excuse for ASU. So again, to sum that up, I get what it's like to just want your favorite team after they have done some high level things to stay at that high level, and how difficult it is with all the crap talking and comparisons and rankings and just how crazy people are in talking about sports and, already talking about Heisman contenders and playoff contenders and things like that after 2 weeks of games. But, last year, obviously ASU ripped through, they had a loss among their first 4 games. And that was disheartening, but, it obviously didn't ruin the season. As Jordan Simone said, it's better to have lost or to paraphrase or to, kind of use the general talking point. It's better to have lost a non-conference game. I mean, obviously that's the only option at this point, but they're still 0-0 in Big 12 play, and they'll still be that way even no matter what happens this week. So
You're not Kansas State right now.
Kansas State in a very, very bad way. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, count your blessings on that one, because that was the team that a lot of folks were picking as the team to beat in the conference, and they can't really beat much anything, paying Army a good chunk of change to go out and beat them. So still a lot of ball left to be played, but as you mentioned, really looking to see, we're not in our preview quite yet, but that first half against Texas State, need to see some more fire, and we need to see them just quit screwing around on offense and not just like throwing for the sake of throwing. Just do what you can and what will be effective. Run the ball. But looking back on that Mississippi State game, major heartbreaker, very difficult to digest. The only thing you can really ask this team to do, or the best thing that they can do right now, is just channel those emotions into focus against Texas State and use that as incentive to just take those emotions out on Texas State.
All right, so let's put a bow on this segment. We asked this question of Jordan. Maybe we would be fair to answer ourselves using perhaps the old 1 to 10 scale. What's your level of, or what was that? Worries? Worries?
Yeah, it was a new dictionary word that was created. It was like
concern, worry.
Curry, whatever. We got to go back. We just had that conversation just a little bit ago. We're recording this. We just talked to Jordan not that long ago. And so, gosh, I'm gonna say a 7 out of 10.
Whoa, all right.
And that's because it would have been one thing if we saw like a satisfying win over NAU, and then this game to where it's like, okay, we've at least seen this team really take care of business and then stumble. What we have seen is maybe a total of 3 satisfying quarters of play, all things considered, across the 2 games. 2 to 3, I'd say, but certainly less than the equivalent to a full game. And so having the feelings I had last week after the win against NAU and just what we saw against Mississippi State, I'm just firmly in the camp of, okay, 2024 was 2024, and this is not 2024. I'm just going to consider this a brand new team, even though a lot of the faces are the same. It's a brand new team in my estimation. So the jury is still out, and the evidence that we've seen so far is just not amazing. So that is a very sliding scale on a week-to-week basis. But right now, I'm not in that camp where I'm saying ASU is going to win 3, 4, 5 games. But I'm also not in that camp that says ASU is going to win 9+. I'm in the camp of, I don't know what this team is going to do, and it's just a week-by-week thing. And what I've seen so far concerns me enough that the current trend to me, is more likely to result in a season that, right or wrong, drastically disappoints the fan base than it is a, indicator that this is going to be turned around and ASU is going to go win 9+ games and keep everything on track. Again, week by week that can change, but where I am right now, I need to see it on the field in a way that gives me some thought process that's like, okay, that's what I'm talking about. That was a full game or a full enough game, a complete enough game. This Saturday is that opportunity for ASU, and they really should do it. And again, if we're here talking about the same thing next week, it might knock down to a 4 or a 5, or it might be a different number. But where it is right now, just got to see it.
I'm at a 4. And I think that, there are the kind of the red flags that we're talking about. I am, yeah, we'll see exactly how they come out against Texas State. But ultimately, I think that a lot of these issues are correctable, that the pieces are there for improvement. And perhaps I'm putting a little bit on the program culture because that was such a huge factor last year in terms of their ability to be resilient. I mean, I don't know how many times you said resilient or resiliency last year.
Oh, God, yeah.
Most of those guys are back. Coaching staffs didn't, is back and intact. They didn't forget how to coach ball, but we'll see. So, it's certainly heading into the year. I did not expect to be at like a 4, like a eyebrow raise, like, hey, what the hell's going on here? But we'll see. Anyways, but yeah, it's definitely not the season so far that we thought, but still a lot of ball, and everything that all the goals that they've had before, 3 weeks ago are still present now. So,
and
we'll
got to
see.
remind ourselves that, it's a different program. I'm not saying to side by side compare ASU to this program, but the team that won the national championship last year lost in the final week of the regular season to a, mid-level performing rival that they had, even though that team had won the previous national championship. But that just goes to show you that crazy things can happen in college football in this era of a 12-team playoff. That, again, even if you lose in that circumstance, it does make the work a little bit tougher, the road a little bit, more complex to get there. But that's just one example about how things can happen. And as we all know, as college football fans, if given the option, it's a hell of a lot better to lose games earlier in the season versus late. So we'll see how that unfolds, and if this is something that can be quickly and effectively remedied by ASU.
All right, now we're going to go behind Bobcat lines with Texas State insider and host of Win Now or Get Bent, Keff Ciardello, returning to the program once again. Keff, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's 2 weeks into the season. I mean, life can't be better right now,
Well, folks in Tempe are feeling a little bit different, but of course the Bobcats are off to a great 2-0 start, almost 100 points total in those first 2 games for the Bobcat offense. What's been kind of your overall evaluation as we start in kind of in the macro sense of the team through 2 games?
Yeah, a lot of surprise, especially like what you just mapped out with how many points they put up after losing their offensive coordinator, Mac Leftwich. He left for Texas Tech after the season. He's kind of been the architect of G.J. Kinney's offenses, even going back to Incarnate Word that 1 year. He was the head coach there, and then the last 2 at Texas State. So him leaving, a lot of people were wondering, what's an offense going to look like without Mac Leftwich for G.J. Kinney? They kind of answered it the first 2 games where it's looking pretty good. Mainly they have a really good young quarterback in Brad Jackson, where they haven't dropped off much where they left it last season. I mean, they run a little bit more this year than they did last year. Definitely more running backs in the mix for the Bobcats. Like last year it was really one back with Ish Mahdi. Now it seems like to be a plethora plus the quarterback Brad Jackson. So it's a little different than it was last year, especially defensively for sure took a step back, but offensively is exactly where it was.
Texas State has had kind of a, much like many high-end group of 6 programs, some transfer portal departures, but also some transfer portal arrivals as well. What's your evaluation so far of kind of maybe the overall net results of the portal activity for the Bobcats?
Yeah, this might be the first year for GJ Kinney and his staff where it's a lot of players that they picked up from the high school ranks that are finally developing and materializing into players that are out there getting time now. Brad Jackson at quarterback, he's one right off the bat. Then you have other players like Chris Dawn at receiver. I know a lot's been made about Bo Sparks and his 5 touchdowns through the first 2 games, but Chris Don is a junior now, and he's a player. He's been in the rotation the last couple of years, but now he's a starter. Like last week, he had 2 big catches over 50 yards. Even guys on defense like Marion Atwood and Will Mitchell, these are players that they brought up from high school. So it's the first time they've been able to use guys that they developed and almost use some of these transfer guys more as depth. Now, obviously, there's going to be some that are going to get it there and play a lot, especially for Texas State at the level they're at. You got to have transfers to infuse positions at corner. They have Kamari Terrell coming over from Oregon. He's played really well last week. You just there's it's more leaning towards their high school players than it is actually the transfers for the first time. And this is Kenny's 3rd year here, the first time since he's been here.
So, of course, Arizona State fans saw the Bobcats in action and had some tense moments during last year's game. Now, for those fans who might just be now checking back in with Texas State, what are some of the kind of the biggest differences between the 2024 Bobcats and now in 2025?
Yeah, the transfer portal, we were just talking about it. It hit really more so the other way for the Bobcats, where a lot of really good players left. Ishmati, who I mentioned earlier, he's off at Arizona now. I'm sure you guys don't like that very much over there. There's some really good receivers like Cole Wilson is at Baylor, putting up some good numbers. They had some other players leave for not through the transfer portal, but towards the NFL, like Joey Hober with the Seattle Seahawks. Jaden Williams had a shot with the Las Vegas Raiders in their camp. So they lost a lot of talent in certain areas where really specifically on the offensive side, there were so many questions going into it. Like, they're going to lose all these weapons. How are they going to be able to replicate it? And it's been through a lot of players that they've brought up, but really like players that they've been able to get through the portal have helped them out on defense, because that's really where it looks different, is on defense for Texas State. Through the first 2 games, they put up a lot of points on offense, but they allowed over 27 against Eastern Michigan and 36 against UTSA. So they're still letting a lot of points go. They're not getting the pass rush like they're used to. They lost some guys there as well. Ben Bell off to Virginia Tech. So they really need to figure out that pass rush, because that's been a big part of this defense. Is if they blitz a lot, they rely a lot on the front 7 to get that pressure, and it takes a lot of the weight off of the shoulders of the defensive back. So that's one area where they step back, is defensively.
All right, so let's talk about some of these Bobcats specifically, and starting off at quarterback Brad Jackson. You mentioned off to a pretty good start and leading this offense that's scored 95 points so far. What does this young quarterback bring to the offense, and what kind of threat does he pose to an opposing defense?
Yeah, a lot of questions were in his arm going into the season, because they put him out there as a true freshman last season. In 3 games, he scored 4 rushing touchdowns. He had 1 passing touchdown, but it was a screen pass. So we just hadn't really seen it. Even against Eastern Michigan, he had the 4 touchdown passes, but nothing really over 20 yards. And when he was able to unleash it against UTSA, it answered a lot of questions. A lot of the build up with him about how strong his arm is. They talked about how his arm is stronger than Jordan McLeod's, but just haven't demonstrated it in a game yet. And they were able to show it off with 4 passes over 50 yards against UTSA. So he's definitely a dual threat. He's a guy who's going to get loose as well. He's going to run with the ball. But he has that strong arm, and they're not afraid to let it loose, even though he is young. He's a young guy, redshirt freshman, local from San Antonio. San Antonio is not too far from San Marcos. So it's been a pretty cool story for Brad Jackson. Way more mature than he should be for his age as well. Anytime he steps up to the podium or anything, you can understand why he's a leader of this team. Like they vote on team captains, and even before he was named starter, he was voted team captain by his teammates.
And talking about the running game, you mentioned some more guys involved so far this year than perhaps in recent years. Lincoln Perry looks like he's maybe taking that top back role there, heading up that group. What can we expect from the Bobcat ground game?
Yeah, it's different than what it looked like last year. That's another area where we talked about how the defense regressed. Another area is the run game and how they do it. They've been using a lot of 12 personnel, putting in 2 tight ends, using them as blockers, really, though. Not a whole lot of passes to tight ends. And they've been cycling through backs. Like the first game at Eastern Michigan, Lincoln Perry's going to start no matter what, but who comes in behind him, you never know. The first game, it was Greg Burrell, UNLV transfer that came in. He did really well. This last game, it was more Jalen Jenkins or Torrance Burgess. Jalen Jenkins, a Washington State transfer from 2 years ago, and Torrance Burgess, UTEP transfer from 2 years ago. So more transfer portal guys that are materializing for them. But they've been using a platoon of backs, and their offensive line, they lost some guys, but they got bigger. They went out and some guys that they had waiting in the wings got moved up, and some other guys they were able to bring in, like Anthony Crease and Lysander Moeo. Both these guys are pushing 340, 350, like really, really big guys. They, from a weight standpoint, Texas State has the heaviest offensive line in the country. That was an article came out in Crescent City News that had the weight averages for all the biggest teams. So they've switched that, where they were, if they passed a little more last year, that is switched more to a run more. It's still pretty balanced, like a 60-40, 55-45, however you want to look at it. But it's a little more run heavy. They're going to run the ball a little more.
You mentioned his name earlier, Bo Sparks, off to a terrific start. I believe a 4-touchdown game will certainly get things done. What makes him dangerous at what looks like is Brad Jackson's top target right now?
Oh yeah, it's his route running. He has such crisp route running, and you could see it. He's a real fast guy. And last season, he had a couple plays where you could really show it off. There was one game they lost the game against Georgia State, but he had 2 80-yard punt returns, one of them for a touchdown. So we've seen the ability in him for a while. But the route running and his chemistry with Brad Jackson, like they were talking about it after the last game, they hung out a lot in the offseason. They passed the ball quite a bit, or all throughout the offseason and in fall camp. They were talking about that big 65-yard touchdown that got them the lead in the fourth quarter, and how before that play even happened, they just looked at each other and knew, like, okay, time to go deep and just go to the end zone. So I think that relationship with Brad Jackson has played a long way in Bo Sparks emerging as wide receiver 1 for Texas State.
Switching over to the other side of the ball, where you mentioned kind of the Bobcats regressing a little bit so far. ASU's passing game has certainly regressed a little bit, scuffling coming off the loss at Mississippi State. So what do you expect to see perhaps game plan wise from the Bobcat defense, and who are some of the names that ASU's got to watch out for?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, just talking with GJ Kinne earlier, I mean, you may say it regressed, but it's definitely something they are taking serious with Sam Levet out there at quarterback and Jordan Tyson at receiver. I mean, he was like, these are 2 guys who could be taken in the first round. So they're definitely taking Arizona State very, very seriously in the pass game. As far as some guys that are emerging, Ryan Nolan at safety has really emerged as a leader in that defensive backfield. That's an area where they had a lot of attrition, a lot of players leave, whether they went on to other leagues or if they transferred to like Michigan State, like Josh Eaton did, the corner. So they need some guys who were here last season and understand this defense that Dexter McCoyle has, because it's a 4-2-5, so it leans heavy on the DBs. It relies on the D line and the front 7 to get the pressure to take it off of the DBs, but a lot of time you're going to see some man coverage, some zone sometimes, but most of the time they're in man. So and when you have a player like Jordan, you gotta it's all hands on deck for them. So I mentioned him earlier, Kamari Terrell. He's an Oregon transfer. They expect a lot out of him. Didn't have a very good first game, a better second game recently. But it's Amarian Atwood and Will Mitchell at the star position at nickel. I think they're going to have to do a lot of helping out, especially on safeties and stuff, or on tight ends. So it's even though it's coming off a loss like Arizona State has, it's pretty easy to think that things are regressing. But I think it's so early in the season, just 2 weeks into it, that there's a lot of time for them to get right. And I feel like them looking at Texas State ahead on the schedule, coming off of that loss, thinking about last year, how close it was, I think they're going to come out with a lot to prove. So the Bobcats need to be ready.
Of course, Texas State almost got the win over the Sun Devils a season ago, and heading into Tempe now. If the Bobcats are able to go to 3-0, what would that mean for this program?
It would be massive. I mean, it would mean a lot, especially if it would be a win over a P4 like Arizona State, a team that was ranked and everything. It has all these aspirations, and it would be it would be really big, because it would mean that Texas State would be in the argument as far as the top G5, G6, however you want to look at the the way it is now. Even though it's weird because where do you put it this year? Because there's not really a 6G until next year, so I don't really know
That's
how to
true.
designate that one yet. We'll figure it out one day. Once they figure out realignment and it's set in stone, right? That'll happen one day. But it would put them in the driver's seat. Obviously, you have like a South Florida and you have some other schools that are in there, but in the driver's seat for that playoff spot. And that would be, I mean, just the national attention that would put on this place would be huge for a program like Texas State. But that's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot to go into Tempe, playing a game that's late. It's going to be 9 o'clock our time here in Texas, so it's going to take quite a bit of getting used to before we can start talking about 3-0 and all that.
So of course, GJ Kinne has done a really good job in kind of revitalizing that Bobcat program. How is he viewed kind of by the overall Bobcat football community? And is there any concern that with the success that a power program might come a poaching?
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely been the concern. I mean, I feel like since the first year, that's been a concern around here for Texas State fans, especially when they look at Baylor and his connection to Baylor. His dad coached there and played there, and everybody keeps looking if that job opens up in Waco. Can imagine they would at least kick the tires on one GJ Kinne down here. The administration here has eased those concerns by throwing more money at GJ Kinne slowly after each year. I imagine if he has another successful one, they'll make another push to do that. But if the P4 money comes calling, it's kind of hard to turn that down, especially for a man with a family and everything. He's got a lot to think about. So I mean, he put 3 years in, so I don't think Texas State fans would be mad at him. It wouldn't be like chase him out of town with pitchforks type of situation, but it would definitely hurt. Yeah, but we've seen from this administration, they made the first hire with GJ Kinne and nobody was really looking at him then. He was that incarnate word, putting up a whole lot of points. So I have trust in them to go find the next up and coming coach. Because when you're Texas State, it's kind of what it's the nature of the beast. You kind of have to be resigned almost to being a stepping stone. If someone's going to have a ton of success here, if a player is going to have some success here, there's a really good chance they're going to move on pretty quick. So I think the transfer portal era is kind of desensitized people a little bit to it, but GJ Kinne leaving would definitely hurt. That is one thing. It's like you want everybody to look at Texas State, but you don't want everybody to notice the coach and come hire him away. So it's almost a catch-22 for Texas State fans, but good problems to have, I'd say.
And the last one for you, looking a little bit down the road, the Bobcats are making a move to the old neighborhood for the Sun Devils in the Pac-12. How's that move being accepted by the broader Bobcat community?
God, what one man's trash is another man's gold in this situation. It's one where I don't think anybody is under the impression that they're leaving for a power conference. Especially when the media rights deal comes out, the money is really that's the determining factor is if you're in that club or not. And it doesn't seem like the money will quite be as high as there. But as far as for Texas State and how it benefits Texas State, it puts them on a different landscape nationally than they were on before. No offense to the Sun Belt Conference. It's been a great conference, but it is more so SEC territory. Like that is the main football conference in all throughout the Sun Belt in that area, and expanding to the West Coast, expanding to some other teams where you could be part of this Pac-12 revival, Pac-8, whatever it's going to end up being called. It gives them an opportunity to present themselves on another stage, on a different stage, and to a different audience that they haven't been exposed to. So I think there's a lot of benefit for Texas State. It's not the old Pac-12 that it was, but it's something that it can be a new Pac-12, and being a part of that is tantalizing enough for Texas State to get in there and play some opponents that are just a little more interesting. When you look at like a Washington State, a Boise State, San Diego State, there's a little more draw to that. Even in basketball with Gonzaga going in there, I mean, they're gonna come, beat the heck out of the Bobcats, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch to see Gonzaga here in San Marcos. So that's going to it'll be fun. And it'll at least be a little bit more money than the Sun Belt. They're only making just under $2 million a year from the media rights deal being in the Sun Belt, We don't know exactly what the Pac-12 deal is going to be. And we don't know exactly if Texas State's even getting a full share of that Pac-12 deal. That hasn't come out. That's been, people have tried to FOIA that whole contract. It's been blocked. It's a whole other thing. So it's unclear exactly how much Texas State is even going to get, but it will at least be more than that $2 million. There's going to be extra travel costs and things like that to take into account as well. But I think the exposure offsets that, at least in the school's mind, the administration's mind.
Plus, you're adding road trips to San Diego, which is always a nice perk of the locations.
Can't beat that. I mean, I'll be there. I hear it's 75 year round. That's my kind of weather.
All right, Keff, thank you so much. I always appreciate your expertise and insight. It should be a good one on Saturday.
I'm excited. Can't wait for it. I'm gonna have to stay up late, get some extra coffee over here. We're not used to. We got to get used to it now. They're going to the Pac-12. Got to get used to these late games. So this is a nice little precursor.
Now, before we jump into our Know Your Enemy segment to learn all about Texas State, if any of you have enemies showing up in your home in the form of pests, bugs, or other sort of rodents or creepy crawlers, there is but one company we can recommend that you contact, and that's Nice Pest Company. Why? Not only because they're a sponsor of ours, that helps, but they are a company owned and operated by Arizona State University alumni and passionate Sun Devil fans. The best way to go for pest control is Nice Pest Company. And they service residences and businesses all over the valley. Check this out, Sun Devil fans. We've talked about it since we made this partnership with Nice Pest Company. You can get your first service for just $42. And the kicker there, 100% of those proceeds, they will be donated by Nice Pest Company to ASU's Sun Angel NIL Collective. You got to support the businesses who support the things that you love. Support Sun Devils. Support Sun Devils who support Sun Devils. It's a win across the board. Well, for everybody but the pests that are involved in the situation, that's for sure. Because as you know by now, Nice Pest Company wants to help Sun Devil Athletics thrive just like you do, so they are well worth your support. Nice Pest Company has sent well over 100,000 bugs to their final resting place with more than 200 5-star Google reviews. You can rest easy knowing that you and your family are in great hands. So whether you've got scorpions or bed bugs, cockroaches, whatever sort of critter you got going on in your house, or if you just want to make sure that you don't get a visit from these sort of pests, contact Nice Pest Company. Let them do the dirty work so you can have the peace of mind that you deserve. You got to protect yourself, protect your home, protect your family. And it's always a nice day to support the Sun Devils, even in a loss. And with Nice Pest Company, it's always a nice day to be bug-free. Check them out online at nicepest.com for a free quote on your service. And be sure to follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Nice Pest Company.
I can give you a quick rundown of what he was saying. I don't know. Did I send you the audio?
I'm not certain. Just going wall to wall with words.
Yeah. So he on offense, they're more run oriented than a season ago. He likes Brad Jackson, dual threat guy. Like really likes how he pushes the ball downfield. Kind of a running back by committee. Lincoln Perry is the guy leading the way, but they getting more guys involved. So rather than kind of like last year with Ishmati being like the go-to,
yeah,
it's more like Perry, but like other guys.
They're averaging like 8 yards a carry between the two of them.
Bo Sparks, a little smaller guy, but speedy, really crisp route runner. He dropped a stat that like they have the biggest average offensive line in the country, which I think they have a 375-pound starting offensive guard, which is probably thinking up the average.
If he's at the G5 level, then that's probably not a great 375.
He has real concerns about the defense. Says they've really regressed there. They lost a ton.
Yeah.
4-2-5. They really rely on the front six to get pressure. They're just not doing that a lot. Guys that he likes: free safety Ryan Nolan, cornerback Kamari Terrell from Oregon. I think they got pretty good nickels and Marion Atwood, Will Mitchell. But yeah, just like he says, like they're just not good.
I don't have a ton on them, but enough to get by.
Yeah, you have them.
No, this I was gonna say, like if it was really honestly like any other team on the schedule remaining, it would be tough to pick a win. But just with their defense being so shitty, like I'm just praying, and I'll talk about it, praying and hoping that ASU is done, especially if Sam's limited. That almost might be a weird blessing in disguise. Like, just don't fuck around. Just run the damn ball.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You know, like,
Either what, 14-point favorite? Or, yeah.
is that what it is? I think I might have like a 10. It's not a big margin. I think like 30.
Well, okay. I saw it open at 14. Has it been betting down with
Not too
ASU
sure.
fans being gloomy?
That's a good point. All right, so I'll run into that. Okay. Now, as we get ready to break down ASU's next opponent, of course, the Texas State Bobcats, as you're preparing for game day, add to your game day list, of course, a visit to Cactus Sports to gear up in all the best Sun Devil paraphernalia. While many ASU stores have come and gone, Cactus Sports is a community staple. They're founded, owned, and operated by ASU alumni since 1992. Every purchase made through Cactus Sports results in royalties that help support Arizona State University. Now, many of their competitors have been bought out and operated by out-of-state corporations, while Cactus Sports stays locally owned and operated. They consider it a privilege to be able to work together with their guests, alumni, fans, and students who help give input for some of the products that Cactus Sports buys. Now, when you purchase from Cactus Sports, not only are you assured of the highest quality officially licensed merchandise, but you also have the satisfaction of knowing that you've truly helped support a local Sun Devil-owned small business. Cactus Sports is located at 514 South Mill Avenue in Tempe and open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and Sundays from 10 to 6. Now, on game days, they tend to have different hours, so stay tuned to their social media for those hours. If you're out of state, or even if you just are shopping from home, you can view their full inventory and shop online at cactusports.com with free domestic ground shipping for orders of $75 or more. And be sure to follow Cactus Sports on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Cactus Sports AZ, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cactus Sports AZ.
And soon to be featured on TNT, the broadcast on Saturday.
That very much. Yep, we did see that on Twitter this afternoon here. So keep an eye out for that. And as you know by now, locally owned and ASU alumni operated since 1992. Shop at Cactus Sports and think local, buy local, be local. All right, so we got to turn the page. It is time for ASU to take on Texas State. Now, obviously, this is a return bout from last year, and that was a game that really tested the mettle of the Sun Devil football team. And the previous week and in that year against Mississippi State and the one that ASU won, obviously that was a little bit of a nail biter, but I think it was really that Texas State game in 2024 that proved to us that, it's a different brand of a Sun Devil team. It's one that can get down early and battle back from that. As folks remember, in San Marcos, Texas State came out hot. They got up to a first half lead, but ASU was able to climb back, and with a wacky and wild ending, the first and not the last time last year where we would see ASU attempt to run out the clock by just launching the ball, a few miles in the air, only for a second to be put back on the clock and possession moved to the other team. Still a victory that really, I think, even though it was followed by a loss in the next game.
Oh, that's right. It was before Texas Tech.
I still feel like that victory helped propel ASU, in a way to the season it had last year, in a sense.
I mean, if a team can go on the road, rally back from a big deficit like that against any, quality team like a Texas State, and in doing so break the Joe Healey road curse, they're destined for some special things.
And like I mentioned it briefly against Jordan, but I'll illustrate it again because, as many of y'all know, I had a bit of a road curse that ended last year, and it might just be retired. We'll see. But it was just wild how it ended because, again, that ending of the game where it appeared that the game was over. I believe the TV broadcast had concluded and they're on to Sports Center, whatever it may have been. And then after a bit of a delay, it was announced that there was going to be a second put back on the clock and Texas State would take possession. And, I can't remember exactly where they had the ball, but it wasn't like on their own 1 yard line. It was like you could run a play and there's a possibility that.
Yeah, it was beyond Hail Mary range, but it was like 60, 70 yards to go.
Something where, something can happen. And Texas State Stadium there in San Marcos, naturally not a huge facility, and it seemed and felt like everybody had left. Like there weren't many people left in the stands. And the only reason that I was still in the stands is I was going to go down and talk to some people from the team. And when they made that announcement, and I just remember thinking to myself, I'm like, this is how this is going to happen. Texas State is going to win this game on the most miraculous / heartbreaking play of all time. and I'm going to be like the only one in the stadium to see it, and I'm going to have to just soak in this misery. Thankfully, that did not happen. So, but that was, again, a very tough game, and it's what we expect. I think was there at some point that you were kind of calling that a loss, or at least a trap game. I remember that was one on last
super
year.
trap game.
Super trap game for sure.
Yeah.
So, that makes sense because Texas State was a team that they finished 8-5 last year.
Because it was also moved up.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a Saturday game. I think it was a Thursday game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So there were some changes there that just made it a little eerie. But they finished 8-5, and that's still a solid season. But again, I'm not gonna say it was disappointing, but I like around that game, we're like, this can be a team that can maybe battle for playoff contention.
Yeah,
or
the
at least
G5 spot. The playoff.
No, they had some talent on that team. But as we shift gears, they do still have some talent this year for sure. But they lost a lot. The quarterback, the Jordan McLeod that they had, who put up some major numbers, he's out, moved on via graduation. They also had several players. Of course, one came to ASU, who left via transfer portal, and many ended up at power conference teams. So, focusing on things as they are right now, going to start with the head coach, GJ Kinne, just one of the real bright up-and-comers in the coaching game. It's year 3 at Texas State. He was 8-5 in both of his first 2 seasons, and each of those first 2 seasons ended in wins in the First Responder Bowl. He's a very, very bright offensive mind, a former quarterback himself. He's from, I don't know if we call it the Todd Graham tree because he didn't coach under Todd Graham, but he played 3 seasons under Todd Graham at Tulsa. He was his quarterback from 2008 to 2010. Kinne had one more year at Tulsa, but that was the year that Graham left for Pitt. So some Todd Graham type of connections there. So, a guy like him and Kenny Dillingham, just generally similar origins.
Yeah, a really great offensive mind, really innovative. Spent some time in Incarnate Word, I believe. That obviously they're an offensive powerhouse at a lower level. And I remember after the game last year in the post game presser, Kenny was a very effusive in his praise of Kenny, and he's like, "Oh, I'm glad we don't have to see him anymore." I was like, he was like mid sentence. I was like, "Well, coach, actually, they're coming to Tempe next year." Because he's done. I mean, Texas State had long been really kind of one of the downtrodden programs in the country at the FBS level, but man, they have been really getting after it, and really exciting offenses. As we'll talk about, they've been putting up a lot of points on the board so far this year with mostly, with a lot of new faces, I should say, on that side of the ball. So one of the best coaches, and kind of one of those things that you heard Keff Ciardello talk about, like, probably no matter of when, not if, a bigger program comes by and poaches them.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that could possibly be, maybe even after this season if they keep things going the right direction. Because what he's done with that program, and no disrespect, with the caliber of talent, typically at that program, and what he's been able to develop and bring there, you put that guy in a major, conference program, and that could be some high level success there. Not to say he's not doing it now, because he is. So to kind of sum up the year to date for Texas State, they are 2-0. They've got wins over Eastern Michigan. They won that game 52-27. And then they also beat UTSA as well. So this is going to be their first game outside the state of Texas in the young season for UTSA. So kind of as the results tell you, they're scoring quite a bit. Their offense is rolling 47 points per game on average, but the defense is allowed around 32 points per game. So these are some things, again, some pros and some cons there. As we talked about, a lot of departures on both sides of the ball, especially on offense, but also defense, though, offensively, they've been doing quite well so far. Starting at the top at quarterback, as we, talked about last year, that Jordan McLeod, who played, solid game against ASU. He was someone that had come in, I believe, from James Madison. I think he was the conference player of the year, switching sides within the conference. He had been at Arizona, I think South Florida. He made the rounds, but he is gone. Brad Jackson, he's a redshirt freshman. He's averaging right at 250 passing yards per game, 5 touchdowns, just 1 interception throwing, 82 net rushing yards with 2 touchdowns. So, a guy that can move a little bit. Talking about 7 total touchdowns there across 2 games with just the 1 interception. So that's something, again, Sam Levitt-esque numbers maybe from last year. So Brad Jackson, again, someone that has very, very little experience, but through the few games that he's played and started so far, just showing some dynamic ability to move the ball and to do so in a few different ways.
Yeah, this is an offense that's leaning a little bit more towards the run than the last year's version for those ASU fans. Remember that 2014 game, but an exciting young quarterback, a dual threat who can push the ball downfield. Is so far limited mistakes. Obviously, he's going to take up a big step forward in terms of the competition he's facing with this Sun Devil defense. But we've seen ASU get gashed by Mississippi State a week ago, and this has been Texas State passing offense that has been reeling off a lot of chunk plays for these first 2 weeks.
And they're getting it done on the ground as well. Lincoln Pari, he averages 119 yards per game on the ground, 2 touchdowns, averaging 7.2 yards per carry. Also has 4 catches for 33 receiving yards. Last year, he had 22 rushing yards on 3 carries against ASU. Jalen Jenkins, the backup running back, also averages 63 rushing yards per game and averages 10.5 yards per carry. As a team, Texas State is averaging 6.6 yards per carry, and those top 2 running backs combined to average over 8 yards per carry. So on the ground, they are, really getting it done with a couple guys. And as you mentioned, the quarterback can run a little bit as well. So you've got, the quarterback and a couple rushers at any given time can move the ball, running the ball. These are the kind of things that we want to see out of Arizona State. But that's going to be a unit to keep an eye on. Now, thankfully, ASU's rush defense, as we've talked about, really been bottling players up. So, it'll be strength versus strength in that exchange.
Yeah, and that group of running backs led by Perry going to be running behind a large offensive line. But yeah, this is a Sun Devil defense that has been doing pretty well. Now, of course, you have to factor in the run game. They're going to have to be accounting for the quarterback in that equation there, as Jackson can get out there and make some big plays with his legs. But this has been a very productive by committee group. Jalen Jenkins goes back to the Wazoo days, I think, right?
Goodness. Okay, I didn't dig that deep, but that's
because I think ASU. I remember, talking about him a little bit ago. But yeah, he's made a rounds, and and Perry, is a name that ASU fans are a little bit familiar with from last year's game. But it's going to be a big offensive line. But I think so far, as you mentioned, it's offensive strength and a Bobcat offense that's been leaning more into the run against a front 6 for ASU and that run defense. That so far, I believe, is still top 20 in the country in terms of opponent yard per carry.
So now in the receiving game, like we talked about, Texas State's got a rusher that's putting up 100 plus per game. They've got a receiver doing the same as well. Bo Sparks, numbers are pretty unreal so far. 12 catches, 237 yards, and 5 touchdowns in 2 games. That's like a 30 touchdown pace for the year. Michael Crabtree kind of stuff there.
He had a 4 touchdown game.
Yeah, he's averaging 118.5 yards per game. Last year, he contributed big time against ASU. 5 catches, 60 yards with a touchdown. Chris Don Jr. ranking second on the team, 7 catches, 159 yards. He had 3 receptions for 21 yards and a touchdown last year against the Sun Devils. So Sparks really getting it done. Don Jr. good in a backup role. Similar to ASU there is a big drop off from there. You're not getting too much production out of, any pass catchers. Maybe some of the running backs are contributing a bit, but after Sparks and Don, there is a gap. But when you got a guy that's doing what Sparks do, he's like the Jordan Tyson, for Texas State here. Target him a lot, getting a lot there. So that's someone that, ASU's defensive backs who had some ups and some downs, but some very memorable downs last week. They are going to be tested this weekend.
Yeah, and we'll see exactly how ASU's secondary responds after the disheartening conclusion to their time in Starkville. Yeah, Bo Sparks, speedy guy, crisp route runner, and we'll see how the Keith Abneys of the world probably going to get that assignment there. And but just overall how ASU's coverages are going to be looking against this Bobcat offense, especially with a guy like Brad Jackson who is still young but still growing in confidence and coming off some big time numbers and making those big plays downfield. ASU really can't afford to have back-to-back weeks in which they get gashed for big plays.
Yeah, just so to sum up the Texas State offense, you got a young quarterback, a guy that's shown some major potential, getting it done in a number of different ways. You've got a couple running backs featuring your starter that's going for 100 plus, but multiple guys who can get it done. In the receiving game, you got a pass catcher that's running for 100 plus per game. It's just I'm not saying they're at that level, but it's, like Levitt, Tyson, Scadaboo was last year for ASU. That's just, statistically in a little bit of a nutshell, some Texas State kind of things that they're doing this year. Now, switching things over to the defensive side of the ball, not quite as sterling for the old Bobcats there. As we mentioned, they're giving up well over 30 plus to begin the season per game. Statistically, linebacker Traylon Payne, team high 17 tackles. He had 6 tackles last year against ASU. Safety, one of my favorite names in college football, because if you reverse it, they have a guy and it's for a team in Texas by the name of Ryan Nolan. So my all-time favorite baseball player, Nolan Ryan in Texas. There's just a little bit. I'll take that little mystical hat tip to my favorite baseball player of all time, Nolan Ryan. He's got 14 tackles. Safety Bobby Crosby has 11 tackles. This is a defense that they're not making plays. They have only collected 3 sacks on the year, and that's 3 players with 1 each. So it's not like they got one guy that's terrorizing quarterbacks. They haven't registered an interception. And I think if the numbers are right, they haven't forced a turnover yet through these first 2 games. So they're only getting a sack and a half per game, not forcing turnovers. So, and they're allowing good chunks of points to teams that are more at their level, like the UTSAs or in Eastern Michigan of the world. So that, again, as we've heard, the defense, the offense getting the job done. But the defense, though this is a 2-0 team, as they play higher caliber opponents, both with ASU and beyond, that's a major concern.
Yeah, they run out of base 4-2-5 scheme there, and there's going to be a lot of man coverage. So I think there's going to be some opportunities for Sam Levitt and the receivers to get more diverse in their distribution and to kind of get right. But as we'll get to, I don't know if that's exactly priority number 1. But you mentioned, Joe, like they lost a lot from last year's defense, and this is a scheme that really puts a lot of pressure on that front 6 and guys to be really disruptive, because on the back end, Ryan Nolan's one of the key guys there, but a lot of new faces in that secondary. Some talented piece as well. Kamari Terrell out of Oregon. Khalil Alexander is a guy that from the edge spot who had a really productive 2024 season for him. He's back. So far a little bit of a little quiet side there, but we'll see exactly how this offensive line for ASU is going to be able to hold up against this defensive scheme. They've obviously had some issues keeping Sam Levitt upright on a consistent basis so far. But I think, this is going to be a defense that, especially at home, where the Devils play, so much better. This has got to be a time where that offense kind of maybe doesn't get completely right, but takes some significant strides forward.
Yeah, you talked about all the departures that Texas State has had. Some graduation, a lot of transfer exits. It's a tough spot for a team like Texas State to be in, where if you kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you have the kind of success they've had, 8-win season for a program like that is highly, highly successful, back-to-back bowl victories. So that's going to get you in a bit of a spotlight, so to speak, or at least on the radar of some folks. Hey, they're playing well, and when you have the players that are playing well to get the team playing well, they're going to catch the attention of some, power conference teams. I mean, I know defensively they had a lineman that Ben Bell, I believe he went to Virginia Tech. They had an interior lineman that went to Colorado. Of course, on the offensive side, you got Meto Obibo going to ASU. Their running back went to U of A. And that's just a few rattling off the top of my head that they lost, to power conference teams. So before we jump into our keys for the game and our scoreboard predictions, a key to your life is being subscribed to devilsdigest.com so that you can get all the incredible insight there is to know about all major Sun Devil athletic sports teams and events that are going on. And whether you need to sound off with your disdain for what's going off, or just talk about how happy you are with the Sun Devils, get into the huddle, get into the message board community, talk amongst your fellow Sun Devils, just no shortage of information. Obviously, with a subscription to Devil's Digest, you're locked into the Rivals and On3 networks. So you're going to get a lot of recruiting coverage and high school coverage, of course, as well as focused coverage on ASU athletics. No better place to be if you are a true Sun Devil fan. So if you're not already a subscriber to devilsdigest.com, get there now, lock in, sign up, become a part of the Devil's Digest community.
All right, time for our 3 keys. Number 1 for me, just start fast, get a lead early. I mean, obviously there's the winning the game motive there. Also, just let ASU fans chill out. It's okay. We talked about all the reasons why there's some red flags, but also the reasons why things might be okay. I think they're probably going to be okay. But in order to kind of there's going to be a lot of nerves in that stadium, and I think most of them are going to be in the stands rather than the players. I think the players are going to be coming out pretty fired up and locked in after the humbling experience in Mississippi. ASU, I want to see them like 14-0 after one or something. Like come out with a purpose and just let everybody kind of relax a little bit. Like, they can slide back in their seats, take a deep breath, watch a good night of Saturday football.
So my first key, generally related, just with a bit of an extension, it's first half domination. I mean, think back to that Texas State game last year, which never really, I don't know if we talked about it in this sense, but it's probably to this day still, it's got to be the biggest game that has ever been hosted at Texas State.
One would assume,
I would have to imagine. I mean, I don't know if they've ever hosted like a UT or an A&M or something like that. And if you remember watching that, or if you attended it, or were at the game in a working capacity, they came out on fire. I mean, that crowd was ready to go, and like the pregame, the tailgates, everything about that atmosphere in San Marcos was like, this is the biggest game ever, and we're going to be up for it. And they were very much up for it. Obviously, they didn't quite win the game, but they were completely up for it. That should not be the case at Sun Devil Stadium, Mountain America Stadium for ASU. I'm not saying that Texas State's not going to be up for it, but you're just not going to have that crowd right there behind them, just ready to see something unfold that could be an unprecedented achievement. But as far as like first half domination is concerned, I'm not just talking about scoreboard stuff. I'm talking about just don't screw around. Get out there, and this is I'm not gonna get too carried away because it's factoring in my next key, but just don't throw the ball 10 times before you run the ball or something weird like that, or just come out. You can keep it simple, and you should be able to gash this defense on the ground, and then use the run to set up the pass. Don't try to just pass to kind of set up the run. Not to say that that's what they've been doing, but just get a little bit more strategy to it. Just show them who you are. And, ASU should be able to dominate this team. And that's what you need to do in this situation, because kind of playing to Brad's first key, that what this fan base needs is a fun game of football, is a game where it's like, okay, those first two games kind of sucked. That second game definitely sucked, but that was ASU right there. And if they do that more, maybe this season gets back on track. Like, that's what you want fans to be walking away from this game saying. And that cannot happen if you have yet another lackluster first half, because then you just got to either play from behind, or it's just going to be a little too chippy to get to that point. You want a double-digit lead going into the half. You want to see ASU. I like your idea, like a 14-0 or like a 17-0 after the first quarter, to where put it on Texas State to have to make a comeback after those first 15 minutes. Just don't let them continue to hang around, or put yourself in a position where you have to fight back.
Key number 2 is I want Sam to become Sam again. And that doesn't mean he's got to throw 30, 40 times in order to do that, to get that swagger back, to get that just kind of those intangible qualities that he had. I think you can do that by, having to be in a more game managery role. And sometimes that game manager title can be, derisive, but I think that in this case, to your point, Joe, like, they can run the ball and be, heavily skewed towards the run game. That includes Sam getting out there and making plays with those legs. But I just want Sam to have those intangible qualities that made him so special, that made him cool under pressure, that made him be able to lead a team that was so resilient, that had, was really kind of, showing that culture a day in or a game in and game out. And I just think that this is going to be a coaching staff that is very acutely aware of the issues of the passing game in the first couple weeks, that have said, Kenny, we talked about earlier. Kenny's been preaching nonstop about how he's got to do a better job to get Sam in a rhythm, and that could be whether it is just kind of getting some easy passes early, or maybe designing some runs for him. Just get him in a better flow, and not in a position where he's got to feel like he's got to press. He's got to win the Heisman with every throw. I think ultimately it's gonna be between player and coach, and to dial it in. The confidence for me comes in the fact that we've seen him do it. And it's just about finding that rhythm once again.
Key number 2 for me, run the damn ball, and do so with your running backs. Do so in a traditional fashion. Texas State, so far through 2 games, allows 194 rushing yards per game. They've allowed 5 rushing touchdowns, and they allow 5.8 yards per carry by opponents, and that is against teams including Eastern Michigan and UTSA. No disrespect to either team, especially UTSA. They've been a solid program. Eastern Michigan, we know what happened with them in ASU last time they played. So respect to those 2 teams. But if those 2 teams have run for an average of nearly 200 yards a game, nearly 6 yards per carry, and 2 to 3 touchdowns per game on the ground, ASU, even if Kyson Brown is not able to play in this game, should be able to line up Kanye Udo and Raleek Brown, and both of them should be able to go for 100 yards plus again in this ball game. And you want to do that throughout as much of the game as you possibly can, but that factors a lot into my first key of dominating the first half. Break their back, have those long drives that are predominantly run based. Have those happen in the first quarter and not like the third or the fourth quarter. I mean, the fourth quarter would be nice if you're milking out a victory, but just do that off the bat, and that will be symbolic but also tangible, because it will show the fan base that, okay, hey, we're trying something different, although that different thing is a very basic thing. They're doing the thing that we want them to do. So that's kind of the significance of that, but also the tangible of ASU when they have dedicated themselves this year to running in a traditional sense. They have not failed. They have had tremendous success. So that's the tangible part. And once again, you're going against a defense that has allowed lesser teams to run for a lot. I mean, this is a game statistically, you should see ASU rush for 250 plus in a ball game like this. The script is there.
For me, kind of, tailing off of that one, I want to see the tight ends just be what they thought they were going to be heading into the year. That means Chamon Metayer gets some targets. That means Kamari Anderson, the man who's just doing wind sprints right now on the field, gets involved in the offense. AJE has been practicing a little bit, so maybe he gets out there, but just make them a threat because they've been doing some great work. Metayer, above all, in terms of the run game blocking, and I want him to have a busy night in that department. But there's been so much talk about getting the other wide receivers involved, and I think we'll see if that actually happens. But I think that there's going to be a concerted effort in order for that to happen. I think we might actually see a Jaron Hamilton reception on Saturday. Who's to say? But I would like to see multiple targets, like, throw 5-6 times to your tight ends, because this is a defense in that 4-2-5 where I think that the tight ends can have some success there.
So my third and final key in this ball game, it's a familiar tune. It's attack the quarterback. So you've got Brad Jackson in what I would imagine is his third start. I don't think he's a redshirt freshman. He may have played last year. I don't think he started, if I'm not mistaken, just kind of going off hunches there. And this is someone that, he's been effective. He's been a dual threat kind of guy running, the ball to a degree, but you just want to get in his face and you want to make life miserable for him. This is going to be a tough road outing for him. And so it's not his first true road game as a starter, but his, again, first road game outside the state of Texas. I feel like there is a very significant difference in how this game can unfold if ASU is able to consistently pressure him versus if they're consistently giving him a clean pocket to work with. He's only thrown one interception through 2 games, but you got to feel that if the Devils can rattle him, that he can be pressed into some mistakes. They do have a high-powered offense. I don't know if GJ Kinne, if he calls it high octane or not, I'm not sure what lane of traffic the hammer is down in, but they do have the ability to move the ball through the air on the ground. So if you're able to kind of terrorize that quarterback, you feel very confident in ASU's run defense, even against a team like this that can run the ball well. So where the question marks come in is, can they pressure the quarterback more? Can they avoid those big plays that they've surrendered? And that should be a yes. And that is basically in marriage with the run game aspect of, like, we know they can do it. And at least with the run game, they've shown in spurts they can do it this year. It's like they just need to do it consistently. So if you can get ASU running the ball throughout the whole game on offense and pressuring the quarterback on defense, those are 2 pieces of a recipe that not only can result in a win and possibly a convincing win, but it can at least get the narrative going, like, okay, they're capable of this. Okay, they're doing the things that they need to do and we want them to do. Let's see if they can do it again. On the contrary, if ASU just fails to get to the quarterback, to any sort of notable degree, just going to keep those questions around. Like, what are you going to do when you're facing these Big 12 teams that, are all due respect, going to have more talented offenses than what we're seeing by Texas State? So getting to the quarterback, ASU's got to have a lot of frustrations, especially on defense, from having essentially lost the game for the Devils last week. Take that energy out on Texas State.
All right. Prediction time. Well, I guess I'll start things off. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, that this game is more about just ASU themselves internally than any matchup or scheme or any X's and O's type of aspect here. This is going to be like a gut check time. I didn't think that we'd be talking about week 3, then the Texas State trip. That this is going to be like gut check time for this team that was a preseason top 11 in the country, and yet here we are. I think that this is going to be a sense I got from players, talking to folks, seeing them. I think that we're going to see some of the Sun Devil frustrations kind of be taken out on the Bobcats. Now they're a good team. I think that the as we talked about, they got some weapons on offense that can put up some points. But ultimately, I think ASU rediscovered a little bit of their identity in that second half, despite the gut punch at the 30-second mark. That ASU is going to run the ball. They're going to run a lot. I think Sam's got something to prove, and I think he's going to be able to prove some of that and be free to do so without feeling the burden of the game plan, the burden of expectations on his shoulders. Big night for the run game. I think that, as you talked about, I think we're going to see another dual 100-yard back night. I think maybe we'll probably have like 4 rushing touchdowns overall. So I think Sam gets in the groove, and maybe a hot take here. Long bomb, Jaron Hamilton touchdown in a 35-24. And that's the 24. I think is going to be a little bit of garbage time for the Bobcats there. So I think it's, even though it's like an 11-point ASU doesn't cover type deal, I think ASU is my first point. The fans are going to feel good, and they're never going to feel ill at ease.
So echo a lot of the sentiments. Looking at this game, as far as the remaining opponents on ASU's schedule, this is the best time to have this game. If ASU were to say start Big 12 play or play just about any other team on its remaining schedule in this game, I would be very concerned, and it would be difficult to predict a win. However, ASU is playing the team that they're playing, and really encouraged by the poor defense that Texas State has shown through 2 games. I think it's exactly what the doctor ordered for ASU to try to just get some more momentum and confidence for Sam Leavitt and just get things moving in that direction. And I'm hopeful that the ASU defense can do its part. You're expecting the run defense to hold its own and continue to do what they've done. You can make Texas State one-dimensional, then the odds increase of the young quarterback making some mistakes that can really affect the outcome of the game. That said, I still think that Texas State, they're going to get some plays. They did it last year. I have confidence they can do it this year. So I think that they will put some points on the board. But again, that defensive piece combined with holding out hope that ASU in this game will be properly motivated and put that into action and do some different things. So all things considered, it's a game that to me, whether it's garbage time or if it's a competitive game, I think it will be a Sun Devil win, but one that still, it's satisfying to a degree, but is not going to completely wipe out the memories of Mississippi State and also NAU for those who, still have a sour taste from that game, even though it was a win. Picking 38-28 ASU.
All right. So we're going to close things out by talking to tight end Chamon Metayer. But before that,
got to give you a huge shout out to our great friends at Sun Devil Family Charities, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization created primarily for the purpose of raising funds to provide financial assistance to Arizona State University alumni, students, staff, and immediate family members adversely affected by medical issues. Their SDFC Cares program allows qualified individuals to request financial assistance by completing an application and submitting verification of medical expenses, which are evaluated by their patient services community. So basically what we're saying here, what Sun Devil Family Charities does is if you're a Sun Devil, if you have some connection to Arizona State University, whether that means you're a student, alumni, employee, that sort of thing, if you are facing a medical issue that is creating financial struggles in your life, that's why Sun Devil Family Charities exists, to help folks out in those circumstances. So if that applies to you, someone that contact Sun Devil Family Charities. They might be able to help. Monetary donations are always appreciated and support those in need due to unexpected medical conditions. Volunteer and sponsorship opportunities are also available on the Sun Devil Family Charities website, which is sundevilfamily.org.
All right. So before we close things out, I had a chance to talk to ASU tight end Chamon Metayer after Tuesday's practice. We talked about a number of things, including the life in the trenches, his work as a run blocker, the lessons that the offense was able to take away against Mississippi State, and what they need to do to get back on track and impose their will on Texas State. All right. So how would you kind of characterize maybe the kind of the team's mental state right now? You know, obviously coming off the heartbreaker in Starkville.
I think as an offense, we found our identity again in that second half. And I think defense know what they need to fix and what they need to work on. I think our mind is in the right place. We just got to put the work in.
Yesterday, Kinne really was effusive in his praise of you and your run blocking. And obviously, that's been something that you've been working on. How do you feel that you've come along in that area and it's kind of manifesting itself on game days?
I think I'm a guy I could go one-on-one with anybody. I perfect my craft. I work on it every day. If I miss a block, I just block back into the details that I know, that Coach wants to coach me every day on, the things that I work on that nobody sees. And I just preach it every day to myself and just come out here locked and ready to go.
How do you feel maybe that attitude and mentality of just kind of putting in that dirty work is spread across the rest of the tight ends?
I think I'm the best blocker in the nation at my position, so I think when my fellow peers see me putting in the work, they go out their way to go put their work in there some. So I know a couple guys in my room struggled early, and I immediately reached out to them, and we got it fixed. And you see a lot of big personnels out there, and we're just smashing the ball down.
What was kind of the mentality in that locker room at halftime? And then obviously you guys come out, put together that 8-play drive, all runs, really kind of swung the tone in a different direction.
Just keep going at them. Just physicality, wear them out. And we did just that. We took the lead, Honestly, we did everything we can. They just had a great play call to our play call. They executed. We have to live with the results and go back to work.
Kinne was really kind of focused on, not getting caught up, and as he said, let Mississippi State beating you guys twice, and just building on the positives. What are some of the positives that you feel? Obviously, rediscovering the leaning on that ground game. What are some of the positives that you guys were able to take away from Mississippi State?
I think I stepped up as a leader that game. I was more vocal than usual. I'm never the guy to go out the way and speak, but that game, it kind of brought it out of me because I just knew these guys. We're more physical than them at the end of the day. They showed in the second half. Hats off to them. They got the W, but we know what we're capable of. We're going back to work this week, and we're back in our stadium.
How do you obviously, having that chip on the shoulder was a key component last year's team. Do you feel that now maybe, dropping in the rankings a little bit, coming off a loss, that maybe that chip is more pronounced right now?
I think there's a lesson in every loss, so I think that's what we're looking to grow off right now. And I think, we needed that, just to shift our mindset, work even harder, I guess the things that we're doing a couple of days ago wasn't enough, so we got to find a way to push further than that.
Kinne also said that you're a guy that needs to get the ball a lot more. What is that like? Just putting in that work, maybe in the blocking department, maybe when the targets aren't coming your way.
Sure. I'm not really focused on targets right now. I'm just finding ways to impact the game without the ball. The ball gonna find me eventually. I'm just gonna be ready when it does. My job is to make everybody else's job easier, and that's what I've been harping myself on.
And how good is it going to be to not hear those cowbells and just hear the Sun Devil fans cheering for you on Saturday?
Honestly, I didn't mind the cowbell. It actually gave me more energy to play. For real, we actually fed off the cowbells in the second half. We was actually saying ring them, like shoot. I told that defense, look, you're gonna have to see me for 4 quarters, and it's gonna be the same energy every single play. So shoot, but it's great to be back in our stadium with our fans, our supporters. To get a W this week and build up off that.
To get a W, you got to beat a pretty good Texas State team. Right now, early in the week, and kind of learn in the film preparation. What kind of jumps out about the Bobcat defense?
The front is very twitchy. They put in a lot of effort. So I just know we're gonna have to match their intensity, match their energy. We can't take plays off. We got to start off from the jump.
So what are going to be some of the keys? Obviously getting off to a faster start than last week. But what are some other keys that you think that this offense needs to accomplish on Saturday night?
Just focusing on our game plan and just being ready. Just no mistakes, no slow starts. We got to communicate. It's all about communication. At the end of the day, once we communicate, we'll handle everything else.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank all our guests, ASU tight end Chamon Metayer, ASU legend Jordan Simone, and Keff Ciardello of the Win Now or Get Bent show. This week's game will kick off at 7:30 p.m. between the Buttes in Tempe. TV will be on TNT. I think that's a first, right? I mean,
I know there was a game at, I think, Oregon in 2005 that was on TBS. So, you know, we're that might be a new one. That was a random memory that I just plucked out of my brain.
There you go.
But yeah, I'm struggling to think of a time they're on TNT.
Was it TNT Knows Drama?
Yeah, a little, you know, Monday Nitro from back in the days. There we go.
All right, so make sure that you tune in, and make sure you, if you're not in the stands, and also make sure to follow us on the social media side. Follow us on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, and give me a follow on all things social media at BDenny29.
Very fitting. I should make a Monday Nitro references. I'm wearing a Scott Hall T-shirt, as I tend to do. If only I had a toothpick, I could throw at Chico. You can follow me at Joe Healey 42.
And make sure you, after you're done supporting all of our amazing sponsors, drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. We will be back next week to wrap up ASU's performance against the Bobcats and look ahead to the start of Big 12 play as ASU heads to Waco.